Chapter 1149. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying were dumbstruck, speechless for a moment. So that's how it is. Even the both of us are not used to such dense spiritual qi. It feels like going too far is as bad as falling short. How can ordinary people withstand it? How many of the tens of thousands of ordinary disciples can survive after this? Noticing their worries, Dong Qitian comforted them timely. Relax. From what I know about the young ones in the residence of Nine Supremes, there won't be many who can't take it. The children are young, their meridians are relatively tender, but this is the time of their lives when they bear the most burden. Moreover, the residence of Nine Supremes is a tough environment. Even if something happens, there won't be many who will die. 1,000 at most. It's those who are older and have their meridians solidified. This is the toughest stage for them. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying exchanged a look, reading each other's thoughts. They flew up together and dashed out at top speed. Dong Qitian sighed and said, "Trying your best is futile. Do you know who can take it and who can't? Perhaps your help will cause a disciple who should have been reborn from this opportunity to fall into the mundane world and lose any room for improvement. It's the same for the servants. Do you have the ability to send everyone away? Or perhaps you know who to send away?" Both of them froze. They stopped where they were, their faces bitter. Yes, who would they help even if they went out? It's better to stay put than to take action in the current situation. The key to whether they can or can't take it lies in the divergence of the critical point. Only they can feel it. Once they reach that point, if they can take it, they'll be reborn and reborn. On the other hand, if they can't take it, their mystical qi will leak out from their dantian, and their cultivation path will be gone, or they'll explode and die instantly. Even if you want to help, it'll be too late by then. I've said it just now. This is fate. Since fate has come, we'll fight for our lives if we do what we can. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying were stunned once more. Are we just going to watch this happen? Yes, the only thing we can do now is to wait and see what happens. Dong Qitian said pitifully. This is the helplessness of life. This was a blessing that was hard to come by for an ordinary person, but it was also a great danger at the same time. You can't deprive them of the opportunity to meet just because of a crisis. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying heaved a long sigh into the sky, their hearts filled with complicated emotions. In the distance, a shrill scream came from afar, followed by a mist of blood rising up. That was because someone couldn't bear it and exploded and died. This wail seemed to have triggered a chain reaction. Similar wails rang out one after another. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying were drenched in cold sweat. Qian Duo rushed up like a ball with a face full of lingering fear. What happened? What happened? Ping Xiaoyi briefly explained the situation. Qian Duo, who understood the current situation, was stunned and speechless. Dong Qitian said, "What all of you should be doing now isn't spacing out or blaming others. You can only let nature take its course when it's beyond your power, and you can't take care of it. This is a chance for the three of you as well. All three of you are high-ranking members of the residence of Nine Supremes. The spiritual qi cleansing this time is also an opportunity for the three of you. Now make the best use of your time to cultivate in this spiritual qi tide. This time, your progress will be comparable to 10 years of usual cultivation. The three of you. When are you going to wait if you're not going to work hard?" "But," Dong Qitian smiled, "I'll keep an eye on some people for you. Go in peace." This time, the spiritual qi tide surged crazily and lasted for a whole 7 days. The residence of Nine Supremes had changed completely during these 7 days. Firstly, many trees grew at an insane speed that could be seen with the naked eye, growing to their strongest state in less than a day. However, they withered quickly and turned into dust. There were also some trees that grew at a relatively slow rate. They grew into towering trees and were fixed there. Many of the flowers and plants withered the moment they were washed by the spiritual qi, but the spiritual herbs were growing and spreading at an insane rate. After 7 days, there were no longer any ordinary weeds or flowers in the residence of Nine Supremes. Those that were still alive were spiritual herbs, plants, fruits, and seedlings. All of them were spiritual roots. None of the beasts in the residence of Nine Supremes survived the change, all of them dying violently. Some mystical beasts, however, advanced continuously in these 7 days. More than 1,300 of the 2,000 servants in the residence of 9 Supremes had died after 7 days, while nearly 1,000 of the 10,000 disciples had exploded and died after the spiritual chi tide. In other words, more than 2,000 people in the residence of 9 Supremes had perished in this event. Compared to those who had died, those who survived had gone through more than one round of cleansing. Some of them had even shed more than one layer of their skin and hair. Although Dong Qitian said that it was up to fate, most of his attention was still on the residence of 9 Supremes' residence. The family members of the Demiurge Flawed 10 were basically all here. As the family members of the Demiurge Flawed 10, they naturally had a certain level of cultivation foundation. Coupled with Dong Qitian's protection, there were no problems, and they survived the ordeal. Like Dong Qitian had said, there was a limit to one's strength. Even Dong Qitian could not protect everyone in the residence of 9 Supremes alone. The residence of 9 Supremes had undergone a complete makeover after this incident, but many people had disappeared forever. Not only did Yin Yang not expect this, even Dong Qitian, a knowledgeable old demon who had lived for God knows how many years, did not expect this. 7 days later, the residence of 9 Supremes was enveloped in an unusually somber atmosphere. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang had advanced a level each, ascending to second-class Saint King intermediate level. It was a delightful achievement, but neither of them was overjoyed. After confirming that the spiritual chi tide had ended, they moved all the dead bodies out at once and buried them in a nearby valley. Looking at the giant tombstone, both of them were speechless for a long time. Who would have thought that such a great thing would cause deaths, and so many of them in one go? Both of them sighed. They recalled Dong Qitian's words. There is no sin one cannot endure, only blessings one cannot enjoy. We'll deal with it when boss returns. Both of them turned to leave. After the spiritual chi tide, Dong Qitian examined the remaining disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes again, and was shocked to find that all the disciples who had survived the spiritual chi tide were gifted and could be said to be the cream of the crop. Many of them had even reached the bone foundation level of the top 10 disciples back then. This luck really makes people envious and jealous. Dong Qitian retracted his mental energy quietly. More than 2,000 people have reached that standard. If I didn't see it with my own eyes and investigate it personally, how can I believe it? Even the East Celestial Palace doesn't have so many genius seedlings with such numbers and talents. Such a situation wouldn't happen with just the spiritual chi tide. This means that the mystical force in the spiritual chi tide has also exerted a stronger effect. But what's the reason? Yin Yang is obviously not here, but it can still activate on its own. The various mysteries of the residence of 9 Supremes, I really can't see through them. As he mumbled to the last sentence, Dong Qitian could not help feeling amused. He had lived in the residence of 9 Supremes for so long, yet he had not noticed anything. He was speechless. If word got out and those who knew him knew about this, they would probably laugh themselves to death. On the 3rd day after the spiritual chi tide stopped, something happened again. Outside the residence of 9 Supremes, a group of uninvited guests had arrived. With a loud bang, the mountain guarding formation shook from the sudden impact. A ferocious voice followed. People in the residence of 9 Supremes, listen up. Open the mountain guarding formation as soon as possible and let us in. Everything can be discussed. Otherwise, the mountain guarding formation will be broken and no one will be spared. The 7 Stars sect had come to seek revenge. Chapter 1150. Dong Qitian squinted his eyes when he heard the clamor. A hint of delight flashed across his face. F***CK me. Someone's here to look for trouble? Great, great, great. Just in time. I've been so stifled lately that my balls are aching. I've been frustrated with the return of the massive spiritual chi drawn by the middle-class celestial luck banner. My strength is limited, and I can't do anything about it. I've been feeling vexed. Now that an ignorant fellow has come knocking on my door to relieve my boredom, how can I not feast on him? It's true that one's strength is limited at times, but my strength is not at all limited compared to most people and things in this world. Everyone else don't move. Do what you should be doing. They're just a few flies, insignificant. Dong Qitian said cheerfully. Xiaoyi and Nuanying, let's go out and take a look. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying followed Dong Qitian out excitedly. Both of them were excited as well. They did not go to the Pentapeak Celestial Luck Banner battle this time, and had stayed at home to watch over things. Naturally, they were as idle as Dong Qitian. Secondly, their cultivation base had improved tremendously after the incident, and they were eager to fight a few battles. Thirdly, they knew very well that Dong Qitian's ability was shockingly powerful, beyond their understanding. Now that his cultivation base had improved tremendously, they still felt that Dong Qitian's cultivation base was extraordinarily high and beyond their understanding. With such a super powerhouse as their backing, what kind of enemy could they not handle? That was why they only felt the excitement of fighting the enemy, not a hint of panic, fear, or any other negative emotions. Outside the residence of Nine Supremes Mountain Gate, 7-star sex leader, Duan Tianchong, stared at the mountain gate with his arms behind his back. Even through the mountain gate's formation, he could still feel the massive amount of spiritual qi within. His eyes were already filled with uncontrollable greed and desire. After the residents of Nine Supremes successfully ascended to the middle-class Celestial Luck Banner, the spiritual qi within the mountain gate is so abundant. It's so much denser than when our mountain gate was at its peak. When the residents of Nine Supremes orthodoxy is wiped out later, perhaps we can consider moving the mountain gate here, and set up our sect's defensive formation here. Even if Yun Yang and the rest come back for revenge, we won't have to worry. Wu Yu was also very tempted by the residents of Nine Supreme's spiritual qi. Duan Tianchong nodded and said, pass down the order. Once we enter later, it's fine to kill and take their lives, but we must do our best not to destroy the facilities. Right. Remember to leave a few people to interrogate and investigate the background of Yun Yang and the others. Don't kill them all. Don't worry, sect leader. We'll be careful. At this moment, a mocking voice rang out. You're just a bunch of thieves who are ignorant and narrow-minded. You can't even break our mountain guarding formation or enter the mountain gate. Yet you're talking about occupying the residents of Nine Supremes territory? Do you think you're worthy? Upon hearing this, Duan Tianchong and the others snorted coldly and turned their heads to look inside the mountain gate. A vague silhouette quietly appeared. However, under the light of the spiritual energy, the silhouette's appearance could not be seen clearly. What can the residents of Nine Supremes, which has just been established, do? Are the people of the residents of Nine Supremes going to seal their doors for the rest of their lives and never come out? Wu Yu said faintly. The mountain guarding formation of the residents of Nine Supremes does have some tricks up its sleeves, but it's only because we don't want to destroy it by force. If you open it on your own, we can still spare a few lives on account of this. If you don't know what's good for you and provoke us, there'll be no survivors after we storm in. Think carefully. The person who spoke was none other than Ping Xiaoyi. The vicious physician's cultivation base had suddenly skyrocketed, and he was now at a delicate moment of extreme confidence. He cackled when he heard the words and said, all right, I'd like to see what you lot are capable of to speak so boldly. Aren't all of you afraid that your tongues will be cut by the wind? As he spoke, he was about to open the mountain gate and rush out to satisfy himself. However, Dong Qitian, who was beside him, was displeased. It was not that old Dong was displeased with Ping Xiaoyi's recklessness. Of course, it was also because he was displeased with Ping Xiaoyi's action. King Hell. It's rare to have a few people to relieve my boredom. How dare you steal my job? Don't move. Dong Qitian stopped Ping Xiaoyi with a dark expression. Ping Xiaoyi was speechless. The enemy is right in front of us. How can we be careless? Let this old man do it myself, Dong Qitian said solemnly. Guan Nuanyang had already gone into stealth mode, ready to assassinate at any time. According to his judgment, there was no lack of experts among the group, with a few of them having cultivation bases higher than his or Ping Xiaoyi's. But it was not a difficult task for him to kill any one of their strongest experts with their arrogance and condescension, in addition to Guan Nuanyang's unpredictability. However, when he heard Dong Qitian say that he would do it himself, he could not help revealing himself at once. You're going to do it yourself? Just these few people in front of you? They're people that even I have the confidence to kill. You're obviously snatching our job. In spite of this, both Guan Yuanying and Ping Xiaoyi knew that Dong Qitian's hostility had been growing stronger recently. The recent change in the spiritual qi tide had made Dong Qitian exclaim that there was such a change in this world that was beyond his ability. Ever since he was rescued that day, he instantly knew that 4,300 years had passed. Later on, he was so close to his hometown that he did not dare to go back. With great difficulty, he mustered up the courage to go back and take a look, only to discover that his hometown had changed beyond recognition. The small mountain village that his family used to live in had now become a huge canyon. His home used to be on the mountain. Now it had become a canyon. Had the earth's crust changed with the passage of time? Elder Dong was frustrated, but he had no one to talk about it. Even when Yunyang asked about it, he could only answer vaguely. During this period of time he sneaked a look again. It was confirmed that it was not caused by some expert's fight, but by the earth's crust. The other side of the slanting valley was connected to the ocean. The world had truly changed. The consecutive realities made Dong Qitian feel powerless. Even if he wanted to seek revenge, he did not even have an enemy. Was he supposed to seek revenge from the heavens? He had been suppressing it forcefully for such a long time. It was only when he saw the residents of Nine Supreme's young fellows growing like flowers that he felt a little comforted. However, no matter how comforted he was, the depression in his heart was still there, never to be vented. In spite of this, there was nowhere to vent in a wretched place like the residence of Nine Supremes. Who should he look for? Even if it was Yun Yang, who had the highest cultivation base, a slap from him would probably leave a human skin on the ground and still be intact. Now that the Seven Stars sect had come looking for him, it was a welcome rain after a long drought for Dong Qitian. He had finally found a way to vent his frustration. How could he allow Ping Xiaoyi and Guan Yuanying to act first and spoil his fun with such a godsend? The people of Seven Stars sect who were outside the residence of Nine Supreme's mountain gate waited for a while, hesitating whether to attack the mountain gate's formation or not. Suddenly, they saw the thick fog at the mountain gate vanish, and then, the mountain gate opened abruptly. At the same time, a gush of extremely pure spiritual qi gushed out from the entrance. The Seven Stars sect members had only taken a whiff before they felt refreshed, as if they had lightened by a few caddies. It's a treasured land indeed. The Seven Stars sect people's hearts were filled with joy. Without any hesitation, they swarmed into the cave. The people in the residence of Nine Supremes are simply too stupid. The mountain guarding formation you've set up at the mountain gate is so intricate that it's difficult for us to charge in. Even if we can break it, it'll take a long time. Time is our biggest enemy. If it's delayed until Yun Yang and his men return, it'll be the beginning of our nightmare. Now, however, you've opened it yourself. Do you really think we'll show mercy when we enter? We're just saying it, but there are actually people who believe us. What are they if not fools? We, the Seven Stars sect, deserve to have this treasured land. It's only a matter of time before we return to the intermediate class of the Celestial Luck Banner, or even advance further. Perhaps, the defeat in the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner this time was not a nightmare, but an opportunity. A great opportunity for the Seven Stars sect to rise again. Upon entering, one could see auspicious mist everywhere, enshrouded by auspicious clouds, spiritual trees, mystical fruits, and treasures of heaven and earth. On both sides of the road, rows of iron pines towered into the sky, but these iron pines alone could be used as excellent materials for forging divine weapons. But here, they were probably the most common greening plants. What a great place! Duan Tianchong was already fascinated, unable to extricate himself from it. Who would have thought that the residence of Nine Supremes, which had just been promoted to the intermediate class of the Celestial Luck Banner for less than 10 days, would have such an atmosphere? The accompanying disciples were also looking around with excitement. This place, it's great. And why does it occupy such a large area? It's said that the residence of Nine Supremes has just been established. So how did it become such a huge place? Our Seven Stars sect has been established for tens of thousands of years, but our headquarters is still so small. Look at this place. It's so grand, so classy, so pleasing to the eye, so refreshing. And these will be ours in the future, all for the 7-star sect's use. This place is good, isn't it? A voice came leisurely. Duan Tianchong and the others looked in the direction of the voice, only to see an old man standing in front of them. It was not appropriate to call him an old man. He looked like he was 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, or even 600 years old. They could not tell how old he was. But he was looking at them with a kind face and spoke with a smile, his attitude extremely amiable. Is this a friendly gesture, hoping that we can be merciful and less bloodthirsty in the future? You're thinking too much, old man. That's right, Duan Tianchong said. And you are? The old man smiled with his eyes squinted. You country bumpkins have never seen such a good place, have you? What? Duan Tianchong was taken aback by this sudden statement. This old man, he said this with a smile and an amiable tone. His mood and the context were completely opposite. It made me feel extremely uncomfortable. What do you think you are? A disciple with a face full of anger loudly shouted. Old thing, who are you? You dare to talk nonsense like this. Do you know who the people in front of you are? The old man chuckled and said, This old man looks down on you because you've just arrived, and you look like you've never seen the world before. You don't look like ordinary people, but you actually look like country bumpkins. With one look, I can tell that you're not presentable. As for what kind of people you are, this old man really doesn't care about that. The 7-star sect people. You're just a bunch of country bumpkins bastards. After coming here, you've already lost your sense of direction, right? You're not here to find a prostitute, are you? Looking at your dissatisfied face, this old man's guess is correct. But you look like a pile of shit. Even if you take the initiative to take off your pants, someone would be interested, right? The old man's face was always full of smiles, but his words were getting more and more vicious. The insulting and vicious words rained down like a barrage of cannons. Before the people in front could digest it, the ones behind them were already more vicious. You old thing. Old B asterisk starred. Old B asterisk starred. The crowd trembled in anger, their words incoherent. A few impulsive ones were about to step forward to beat him up. The old man suddenly turned furious. How dare the few of you form karmic ties with me? The crowd. How dare you scold me in front of my face? Dong Qitian hollered, his voice stern. It's already an unpardonable crime for you to insult me. Moreover, you've come here with ill intentions, shouting about killing and wanting to steal our sex foundation for your own use. It's all clear to me that I can't let you go no matter what. As he spoke, his face relaxed again as if he finally found an excuse to attack. He was happy, relaxed, and at ease. Old B asterisk starred, old B asterisk starred, old B asterisk starred, old B asterisk starred. The crowd cursed continuously, each of them so angry that their mouths were twisted. Attack. No rush. We outnumber him. Let's vent our anger by scolding him first. This old B asterisk starred is so infuriating today. How can I vent my anger by killing him? The old man sneered. Good. Now that all of you have scolded me, I can't let you live. Before his voice died away, the old man quietly took a step forward. There was no noise from the ground. There was no movement from the mountain peak either. However, everyone in the 7-star sect felt the earth tremble, and the mountains shake, as if heaven and earth had been turned upside down at this moment. Everything was clearly the same as before. But at this moment, the old man in front of him had completely and utterly transformed into a demon god. 2 as 1 today. Continuing with the infusion. Tomorrow will be the last day of infusion. Tonight's temperature 37 degrees has dropped. Hee. Genius. 1 second to remember this website's address. Mobile version. Chapter 1151. The people of 7-star sect, on the other hand, were horrified to feel that they were just ants before this old man. Ants that could only be trampled, crushed, and crushed to death with a finger. An unprecedented pressure that he had never felt before came crashing down. Puff. The group of 20 people from 7-star sect, regardless of their cultivation base, had only one feeling. They could not support their bodies as their knees buckled, and they fell heavily to the ground. He did not even move, but with his aura alone, he had completely overwhelmed them without the slightest resistance, regardless of their cultivation base. Whether it was Wu Yu, who had the highest cultivation base, or the junior disciples, who had the lowest cultivation base. What kind of cultivation base was this? What kind of cultivation base was this to be able to achieve this? When Duan Tianchong's mind cleared up, he was aghast and panicked. He immediately realized that this time, the Seven Stars sect had kicked an iron plate. The old man in front of him, at the very least, had the cultivation base of a holy master. Residents of 9 Supremes, since you have such an unparalleled expert, you could have exposed it. Why didn't you? As long as you did, the battle for the Celestial Luck Banner would be a joke. Not to mention a middle-class Celestial Luck Banner. Even if you said it would go straight to upper class, no one would say anything. This was an expert who was at least a Supreme Saint. Oh my God. It turns out that encountering the residents of 9 Supremes and losing was not a nightmare, but the beginning of it. No one else could have such an opportunity, but it was the fate of 7 Stars sect's destruction. Senior, Duan Tianchong shouted with all his might. This is a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Pfft. I'm scolding you for your own good. It's your fate, your good fortune. However, not only did you not appreciate it, you even dared to scold me. That means you formed a karmic bond with me. How can I ignore the karmic bond? How can my thoughts be clear? Dong Qitian said earnestly. Don't worry, I won't go too far. If each of you takes a palm from me and survives, then so be it. Whether you survive or not, all grudges and karmic bonds will be written off. It's simple, straightforward. Everyone in 7 Stars sect was drained of all color, a deathly stillness enveloping them. What a good whether I survive or not. All grudges and karma will be written off. What you're saying is the truth. You're being very honest. The karma of those who survived would be written off, and the karma of those who didn't survive would also be written off. No matter how powerful you are, you can't go to the netherworld to settle the score with us again. Can you? But who among us can withstand your palm? From top to bottom, everyone from the 7 Stars sect began to plead and flatter him. It was a pity that Dong Qitian paid no heed to it at all. He stretched out his hand excitedly, and Wu Yu, who had the highest cultivation base among the 7 Stars sect's people, floated up like a piece of cotton. Unable to move an inch, he floated to Dong Qitian. Dong Qitian raised his hand gently, ignoring Wu Yu's pleading gaze as he slapped him lightly. Then with a loud bang, the top expert of the 7 Stars sect soared into the sky in a spiral shape, passing through the highest point of the residence of 9 Supreme's defensive formation, and heading towards the direction of the sun in a slanted manner. His speed was at its peak. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a black dot, a shooting star. Duan Tianchong and the others stared into the distance, their faces filled with sorrow, despair and frustration. Wu Yu, who was flying at top speed in the sky, had already tried all the secret skills he had learned, but to no avail. Instead, he flew faster and faster, his momentum never slowing down. The force of the slap had only spread from his cheek to his entire body. After flying for a while, he could not even blink his eyes. His entire body had turned into an ice sculpture, and his life had left his body. Dong Qitian's slap became increasingly high-spirited and enthusiastic, completely ignoring the cries of misunderstanding and mercy as he grabbed them one by one, giving them a slap. It was loud and crisp. Therefore, people flew into the air one after another, like peerless experts gliding through the air, flying to the faraway shore. Dong Qitian was like a playboy who never got tired of it, grabbing one by one and sending them flying with a slap. A slap sent them flying again. He was so forceful, so attentive. It was as if he wanted to turn all his worries into nothingness with each slap. It was only when the last person from the 7 Stars sect had turned from a kneeling position into a flying person that Dong Qitian heaved a long sigh and said, "Satisfying. Satisfying." Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang came out together when they saw that the farce had come to an end, but their faces were pale. Senior, this. Both of them were truly resentful. It was not easy for them to come looking for trouble. Both of us are guarding the sect. This is what we do. You call yourself the chief instructor, but you're not actually from our sect. Why are you here to cause trouble? Can't you have some sense of civility and responsibility? The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. Was it not used here? Dong Qitian said seriously. These people probably came to occupy the residence of 9 Supremes, when Yun Yang and the others weren't around, so they couldn't return to their homes. Such people are the most despicable and hateful. The martial world's rule is that one shouldn't bring trouble to one's family. Scoundrels like this who can't defeat others outside, but vent their anger in the other party's home, for their own selfish desires, are the most despicable. Don't let people like this go if you meet them in the future. I'm only doing it out of righteous indignation, and to end the karmic ties between us. You don't have to thank me. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying were exhausted. Of course, we understand this logic. Also, how can you tell that we're grateful to you? Elder Dong, we're actually not very concerned about where these people are from. You always say that a small clue can tell a big picture. Just by looking at their extraordinary cultivation base. The one with the highest cultivation base is even higher than both of us. And the resentment in their mouths. It's not difficult to tell that they're from the Celestial Luck Banner sect that lost to the Supreme Leader in the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. Guanuanying was dismayed. But Elder Dong, why did you slap all of them away? You must know that since these people are originally from high-class Celestial Luck Banner sects, they must have a lot of treasures with them. They came to our house looking for trouble, and we killed them. All of their belongings are ours. But you just slapped them all away. Ping Xiaoyi was stomping his feet as well. That's right, Elder Dong. Those slaps of yours must have taken away hundreds of millions of wealth, at the most conservative estimate. No, it's probably more than that. Dong Qitian snorted and said, What are you talking about? Your father did it to end the karmic ties between us. That's your father's personal grudge. What's wrong with that? This is normal. This is how it should be. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when he'd already vanished without a trace. These two little bastards. I was the one who helped them solve their problem, but they're blaming me instead. Is there any justice left in this world? Even if your cultivation base has improved, and you're capable of dealing with this group of people, how could you do it so cleanly? Good intentions don't go unrewarded. Although I did slap away a huge amount of wealth, I only cared about my own pleasure. But did your father forget? It's just a small matter. Do you have to do this? Somewhere in the distant sky, Gan Tianyin led Jiang Luoluo above the clouds, traveling swiftly through the fog. Master, the residence of 9 Supremes Mountain Gate is just beyond this hill. Jiang Luoluo pointed to the front. Unexpectedly, Gan Tianyin's expression changed abruptly. She said in a focused tone, There's an expert in front. The speed of the person is rarely seen. Sensing that something was amiss, both master and disciple dodged quickly. However, it seemed like it was too late. The person was moving forward in an extremely strange and awkward manner, spiraling at an appalling speed that formed a spatial crack around his body. With unparalleled speed, the newcomer charged head-on towards Gan Tianyin. Gan Tianyin was enraged, her willowy brows raised. You're so unreasonable. Before he could finish his sentence, the person still didn't waver in the slightest as he brazenly rammed into him. Gan Tianyin took a deep breath and extended both of his hands, grabbing out Rainbow Phoenix Heaven Mending Hand. This was the Phoenix Cry sect's secret technique, and only Gan Tianyin and the sect leader, Ping Zhanyue, could master it. No matter what kind of attack she faced, even if it was a powerful opponent who was a level higher than her, Gan Tianyin could ensure that she would not lose any of the opponent's attacks. The speed of the newcomer's attack was already shockingly fast, but the newcomer's attack was even more strange. He completely ignored the strong resistance of the Rainbow Phoenix Sky Mending Hand, and used his head to block Gan Tianyin's hand, then pushed forward with even more force. Gan Tianyin was shocked. What kind of skill is this? What kind of fighting style is this? Gan Tianyin did not know what was going on, so she naturally gathered all her strength and pushed the person with all her might. However, she still felt a chill on her palm. The force coming from the person's head was so strong that she could not help but be pushed back. But this wasn't all that surprising. While the other party's head was forcefully charging forward, it was also constantly spinning against his palm. What kind of strange skill is this? How can the head continuously spin in one direction? Gan Tianyin focused her mind and looked at the person. She saw that the person's long hair was loose, his body was spinning, and his face was occasionally revealed. A pair of dead fish-like eyes stared at Gan Tianyin. Wu Yu. Gan Tianyin recognized the person and was so surprised that she almost shouted. When did Wu Yu's cultivation become so strong? And when did he cultivate such a strange skill? While she was thinking, she felt that the person's pushing force seemed to have weakened. Gan Tianyin shouted angrily and grabbed the person's head with one hand. She circulated the power of the heaven and earth cage to the limit, fixing the shackles, and then pushed back. She thought to herself, no matter how strange your skill is, even if the head is a vital point, I will directly crush it. Let's see how you can be fierce then. Unexpectedly, the person's head was grabbed by her and shackled by the power of the heaven and earth cage. But his body was still spinning. In just an instant, Gan Tianyin watched as the person's neck was twisted 17 or 18 times. And then, with a snap, it broke on its own. A head was in her hand, and the body actually maintained the spinning momentum, spitting out blood as it fell. What the F***ck? Gan Tianyin, who had been gentle and pleasant all her life, and was known as an icy beauty, completely lost control and burst out with vulgarities. Such powerful strength, such terrifying speed. In the end, the person's head spun in her hand. She couldn't help but loosen her grip, and Wu Yu's head fell to the ground. Then, she thought of something, and hurriedly reached out to suck the head back. She resisted the nausea and opened her eyes. But she saw that Wu Yu's eyes were still staring like a dead fish, without any luster. Wu Yu, he's actually already dead? Gan Tianyin was shocked again. She loosened her grip, and Wu Yu's head fell weakly to the ground for the second time. Wu Yu was killed long ago, and that person just casually threw his body out. But what kind of expert would be able to cause such a terrifying force? At this moment, Gan Tianyin shuddered with fear and trepidation. There was actually such an expert in this world, and she was already in existence above the clouds. But how much higher, and how far was she from the person who made the move? She turned to look and couldn't help but shiver. Where's Luoluo? Just as she was looking, she saw Jiang Luoluo fly up from below, holding a space ring in her hand. She looked at it fondly in her hand. Master, Wu Yu is a martial saint after all. There should be some good things in there. The corner of Gan Tianyin's mouth twitched. This money-grubber disciple. Do you know the background of the person who killed Wu Yu? You're acting so rashly to take benefits. But before she could say anything, another person in front of her, like a whirlwind, crashed into Gan Tianyin. Gan Tianyin had learned her lesson this time. She didn't use any techniques, but directly used her hand and thick mystical energy to block it. As expected, although the other party's momentum was fierce, the momentum was not enough. After a moment of rotation, his head turned on its own. Just like Wu Yu, he was long dead. When Gan Tianyin saw the face of the person, she was surprised. Duan Tianchong, the #1 expert of the Seven Stars sect, as well as their sect leader, unexpectedly died here. And even their corpses were being kited. However, the surprise was far from over. One by one, the corpses of the Seven Stars sect's experts, who went to the 5th layer of heaven to participate in the Celestial Luck Banner contest, arrived. Gan Tianyin caught them one by one until she was numb. Jiang Luoluo was in high spirits. Not only did she receive a lot of space rings, but she also received 2 space bracelets. I'm rich. Jiang Luoluo was extremely happy. Master, there are a total of 22 space props. Gan Tianyin was speechless. 22 was the number of people who participated in the Celestial Luck Banner contest. In other words, all of them, without exception, were killed. Not only were they killed, they were also kited, and their heads were twisted off by their own hands. What exactly was going on? Chapter 1152. Gan Tianyin was puzzled. What kind of deity had the Seven Stars sect offended? These 22 people were the absolute elites of the Seven Stars sect. Once they died, the Seven Stars sect was basically annihilated. The remaining people would never be able to support the Seven Stars sect's foundation. There were the number 1 expert, the number 2 expert, the number 1 elder, the number 1 priest, the sect leader, the leading disciple, the head of the enforcement hall, and the core seed disciple. What else could the Seven Stars sect have other than these people? What kind of combat power could they have? However, Gan Tianyin could not care less about the Seven Stars sect now. She was only thinking about who the hell had the Seven Stars sect offended? How could they have suffered such a crushing defeat and be completely annihilated? Jiang Luoluo stood aside, looking at the cloudy front and murmuring, "The direction they're flying from is the direction of the residence of 9 Supremes." The words were soft. However, in Gan Tianyin's ears, it was like thunder rumbling in the 9 heavens. For a moment, she felt like she was seeing stars. She forced herself to calm down and said with some confusion, "The residence of 9 Supremes? Could it be the residence of 9 Supremes?" Jiang Luoluo stammered, "I think it should be." Gan Tianyin's eyes went blank for a moment before she said, Yes, the biggest enemy of the residence of 9 Supremes is now the Seven Stars sect. As for the other lower-class sects that were defeated by the residence of 9 Supremes, the difference in strength is too great, so they probably won't dare to come. The Seven Stars sect has ended their battle long ago and came here. This makes sense, but the main force of the residence of 9 Supremes has not returned. Could it be Yin Yang's master? For a moment, Gan Tianyin thought of this possibility and could not help but break out in a cold sweat. It seemed like this was the only possibility. What was more frightening was that the people of the Seven Stars sect did not have a single injury on them, only a palm print on their faces. They were slapped to death and thrown out. What level of cultivation base was this? Looking at the direction of the residence of 9 Supremes in the distance, Gan Tianyin actually hesitated, not knowing if she should go. It was so dangerous. However, even if the situation was unclear and there might be danger ahead, he still had to make a trip there. First of all, Phoenix Cry sect's leader, Ping Zhanyue, had promised Yin Yang that she would assist the residents of 9 Supremes after the Celestial Luck Banner contest. Encountering battles and dangers was expected. At most, it would be a so-called battle in the original plan. The so-called dangers could not really pose a threat. Secondly, the tragic deaths of Duan Tianchong, Wu Yu, and the others from the Seven Stars sect came from the direction of the residence of 9 Supremes, which meant that there might be a great ominous person in the residence of 9 Supremes. However, if this great ominous person belonged to the residence of 9 Supremes and annihilated the Seven Stars sect to protect the residence of 9 Supremes, then this ominous person would not be valid for Gan Tianyin or the Phoenix Cry sect. Instead, it would be a great benefit. Based on these two considerations, Gan Tianyin decided to maintain his original intention and fly straight to the residence of 9 Supremes with Jiang Luoluo. However, he could not help but feel a little uneasy. It did not take long for both of them to arrive at the mountain gate of the residence of 9 Supremes. After reporting their identities, the mountain gate opened immediately, and both master and disciple entered smoothly. From the moment they entered, Gan Tianyin immediately lost her composure. Was this the residence of 9 Supremes that had just obtained the Celestial Luck Banner a few days ago? How was this possible? This spiritual atmosphere. It was more than twice as dense as the Phoenix Cry sects. No, perhaps it should be said that the spiritual atmosphere was a few times denser. What was going on here? Who can give me an explanation and clear my doubts? Ah, sister-in-law, you're back. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang came forward to greet her, exchanging pleasantries and expressing their closeness. Jiang Luoluo was a prominent personage in the residence of 9 Supremes. Other than being the fiancée and future daughter-in-law of Luo Dajiang, the residence of 9 Supremes third in command, she was also the only female representative in the residence of 9 Supremes. After Yun Yang, her words carried a lot of weight. Little Yi Nuanyang, how have you been? This is my master. Afraid that both of them would misunderstand, Jiang Luoluo quickly introduced, Boss Yin has won the battle of the Celestial Luck Banner at Mount Pentateuch this time. He's shown brilliantly, overcoming all obstacles along the way, and finally taking down the 7-star sect that's originally at the bottom of the middle-class Celestial Luck Banner, replacing it and advancing it to a middle-class Celestial Luck Banner. He's also been given the opportunity to further his training at Mount Pentateuch, so he'll need some time before he can return. I'm not from the residence of 9 Supremes, so I can't follow him. Overcoming all obstacles like this has also created a hidden danger of making a lot of enemies. My master was worried about me coming back alone, so he came with me to help out. Both of them were quick-witted people. Jiang Luoluo's explanation was enough for both of them to understand. Of course, it was also because Dong Qitian had analyzed beforehand that Yin Yang and the others must have obtained a higher-level Celestial Luck Banner this time. Both of them had a vague idea of what was going on. There was also the ambush in front of the 7-star sect. Thank you, Senior Gan, for your benevolence. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying bowed deeply. It was one thing to have the ability to handle it, but it was another when someone else was willing to come and help. Gan Tianyan's willingness to come was a huge favor. Even if he did not contribute, he still had to appreciate it. You're welcome. Gan Tianyan was not in the mood to be courteous now. His eyes had long lost track of where to look. Was this the residence of 9 Supremes? Not to mention that it was a small sect that had not even been established for a year. But with its scale, how could it be considered a small sect? The land it occupied was so vast, almost 10 times that of the Phoenix Cry sect's mountain gate. Not only was it vast, but how could the spiritual qi here be so dense and viscous? Such a spiritual qi atmosphere was so dense that ordinary people would not be able to withstand just one breath. Gan Tianyan casually swept a few glances and was shocked by what she saw. In the soil on both sides of the road, there were traces of tender white plant buds that seemed to be doing their best to burrow out of the soil. There were also countless lush spirit plants that had already stretched out their bodies and were swaying in the wind. Oh my God, those are obviously treasures of heaven and earth. How can they grow so fast? Gan Tianyan looked at the sprouts that were growing all over the place. Although they were still in their nascent stage and had not lived for long, they were all genuine spiritual roots, spiritual plants, spiritual herbs, spiritual sprouts, and spiritual sprouts. Not a single one of them was ordinary. Thinking about how the spiritual qi in the residence of 9 Supremes was so abundant, how could these treasures of heaven and earth not grow crazily and grow as time went by? As long as there was a little time, the tens of thousands of acres of land would be filled with spiritual herbs? All of them would be treasures of heaven and earth? Gan Tianyan almost fainted at the thought of this possibility. It was just that Gan Tianyan suddenly understood why the disciples of the Sacred Heart Palace and the Eastern Celestial Palace could improve so quickly in their cultivation base when they came to visit a sect that was on par with her own sect, or even 2 levels lower than her own sect. Although she had known the reason before, she had not been qualified to visit the spiritual herb gardens, their halls and palaces back then. She had not seen the shocking gap in her imagination with her own eyes. Thus it was difficult for her to truly understand it. Now that she had seen the residence of 9 Supremes with her own eyes, Gan Tianyan could only sigh. There's really no comparison. Gan Tianyan instinctively recalled the setup that Yin Yang had made in response to Qi Lai's provocation. Recalling the hateful gazes of the 10 disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes, she sighed deeply again. Qi Lai was doomed. Just as they entered the residence of 9 Supremes' mountain gate, Gan Tianyan was certain that Qi Lai was doomed. It went without saying what kind of improvement those geniuses would have when they cultivated in such an environment. Ping Xiaoyi and Guo Nuanying introduced the environment as they led the way, accompanying Gan Tianyan and her disciple to the direction of the residence of 9 Supremes' main palace. Gan Tianyan was the great elder of the Phoenix Cry sect. He was a high-ranking authority in the sect that was second only to one. Since the relationship between the 2 sects had improved, Ping Xiaoyi and Guo Nuanying had to treat him with utmost courtesy. The higher the group went, the thicker the spiritual qi became. Gradually, it turned from thick to thick. Have there been any ignorant rascals who came looking for trouble these few days? Gan Tianyin asked. There really hasn't been any. Ping Xiaoyi thought about it. Trouble? There really wasn't. Even if Elder Dong was here, it wouldn't be considered a problem. Gan Tianyin had obviously misunderstood. Her train of thought had deviated from her original plan. She nodded and said, That's good, that's good. As they spoke, a group of little girls and boys walked down from the mountain peak in a neat line. Each and every one of them was adorned with pink and jade-like makeup, causing one to be extremely fond of them at first glance. The clothes of this group of children were rather messy, and it was obvious that they had gone through a lot to get here. However, it could also be seen that each of them had tried their best to tidy themselves up. So although the traces were obvious, they did not look too shabby. Some of the children's young faces were still bruised and swollen, but all of them kept a straight face and said nothing. Seeing the group approaching, the group of children moved to the side of the path, under their leader's order. They greeted Ping Xiaoyi and the others with a bow, asking them to go first. The more Gan Tianyin looked at them, the more she liked them. Each of these little fellows is incredible. When I took Luo Luo in as my disciple, she was probably like this, wasn't she? Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them here. All of them have similar qualities? Gan Tianyin's heart was filled with tenderness when she saw a little girl with tears in her eyes and pouting lips, looking aggrieved. She lowered her head and asked softly, What's wrong? The little girl raised her head stubbornly and held back her tears. Her lips were pouting and she did not speak. A strong-looking little boy at the side pouted and said, What can this be? She lost. It's fine if she can't win, but she still has the cheek to cry. Shameless. The little girl finally could not help but cry. How am I shameless? I don't want to lose either. But this is the third time I've lost. A momentary loss is just yesterday. Remember your mistakes, and don't repeat them again. If you lose today, you can fight back tomorrow. Just win. Know your shame and then be brave. Nothing is better. The little boy leading the group scoffed as he spoke in an adult tone. The corner of his mouth that was swollen from the beating hurt. He grimaced in pain and spat out a mouthful of blood-stained spittle, showing some of his ruthlessness. Gan Tianyin was very interested. You guys got hurt in a fight during training? Your teacher doesn't blame you? The 20 little fellows looked dejected. We haven't acknowledged him as our teacher. Sigh. They actually sighed in melancholy. We fight to acknowledge him as our teacher. How can we be qualified if we don't win? Know your shame and then be brave. We know our shame now, but we're still not brave enough. Gan Tianyin was shocked again when she heard the childish words. They were a bunch of children with such great potential, but they did not even have the right to acknowledge someone as their teacher? If this was an ordinary sect, or even a lower-class celestial luck banner sect, the higher-ups and elders in the sect would probably snatch them away. Why did they have to fight before they had the right to acknowledge someone as their teacher here? Ping Xiaoyi interrupted and asked, Which team do you belong to? Sir. These little fellows obviously knew Ping Xiaoyi. When they answered Ping Xiaoyi's question, they puffed up their chests and straightened their backs. Their spirits were refreshed as well. We're the third team of D Unit. Ping Xiaoyi scolded. You're only in D Unit. God knows how long it'll take for you to reach a unit. Go back and cultivate well. What's the use of crying and complaining? Yes, sir. Thank you for your teachings. The little fellows walked away with their heads hung low. What's the third team of D Unit? Gan Tianyin asked in confusion. What does a unit refer to? With Gan Tianyin's position, it was inappropriate for him to ask about the disciples of another sect like this. But he was too curious. Moreover, the in-laws between the two sects were almost set in stone. Gan Tianyin was also a mother-in-law in the residence of 9 Supremes. And the question did not involve the secrets of the residence of 9 Supremes' cultivation methods or arcane skills. He was merely curious but not too abrupt. Ping Xiaoyi smiled bitterly and said, It's just a symbol of the disciples' branches. It's easier to differentiate and manage. Gan Tianyin said humbly, I'd like to hear the details. At this moment, another team walked over from the road ahead. When they saw the group, They stopped by the roadside and bowed to greet them. Gan Tianyan asked in a timely manner, "Which team are you?" The leader of the team was a little girl. She glanced at Gan Tianyan timidly, and then at Ping Xiaoyi, hesitation written all over her face. She was speechless for a moment. "I'm asking you, just tell me," Ping Xiaoyi said. "Yes, sir," the little girl answered crisply. "We're B Unit 5th Team." "B Unit 5th Team?" Gan Tianyan looked over with a frown. Indeed, she realized that this team's disciples were stronger than the team that had just passed by in terms of essence, qi, spirit, cultivation base, and talent. This knowledge made Gan Tianyan's mind whirl. Another thought flashed across her mind, and it was this sudden thought that left her dumbfounded. Could it be that the disciples of A Unit, B Unit, and C Unit are divided according to their cultivation base or talent? Not long after, they met another 30 to 40 teams. They were all lined up neatly and walked in unison. There were C Unit, E Unit, Xian, all the way to Gui. After another round of careful observation and identification, Gan Tianyan's guess was confirmed. A Unit, C Unit, D Unit, J Unit, J Unit, J Unit. The 10 heavenly stems. Gan Tianyan felt that she was already dazzled and distracted. She remembered this website's address in a second. Mobile version M. Chapter 1153. At the end of the journey, there were finally a few teams of Alpha disciples walking over. Gan Tianyan almost broke down as she tried to identify them again and again. Even a profound cultivator's state of mind was wavering. She tried her best to maintain a poker face. One of her hands already hidden in her sleeve as she pinched her thigh until it was bruised and black. Every single one of these A-ranked disciples was at the same level as the 10 disciples that Yin Yang had brought out. Each of them had the looks of a dragon and a phoenix, innate physique, gifted and talented, each and every one of them. How many were there? There were 30 people in each team of Alpha, and there were 90 such talented youths. How was this possible? Although the sex ranked slightly behind them, in Gan Tianyan's opinion, many of them were clearly too young, and their combat strength was relatively weak, which was why they stayed in the sects. Once they were slightly older, they would not pale in comparison to the Alpha disciples. In other words, each of the hundreds of Beta disciples could be called a prodigy in other sects. The hundreds of Alpha geniuses in the residence of 9 Supremes were equivalent to the hundreds of core disciples of other sects leaders. Such a figure, not to mention a middle-grade sect, even in the East Celestial Palace, would be terrifying to the point of disbelief. Gan Tianyan suddenly felt that she had come to a concentration camp. A concentration camp for geniuses. May I ask why the residence of 9 Supremes classifies the disciples this way? Gan Tianyan asked. To avoid trouble. Guan Nuanying said. Senior, you should know that the higher-ups of the residence of 9 Supremes are very few. There are only about 10 of us. How can we have the time to manage and teach so many disciples? Of course, we have to compare our methods. Gan Tianyan was speechless. Therefore, this is how we arrange these disciples. Guan Nuanying continued. Guan Nuanying said. Only those who have ascended to the A rank will be taken in as seed disciples, the core disciples of the sect. Only those who are at least B-rank disciples are qualified to become true disciples. Of course, when true disciples improve to a certain level, they can become the core disciples of the sect. Then, C-rank disciples are inner disciples and D-rank disciples are outer disciples. There's no specific classification for those below D rank. They're all menial disciples. Gan Tianyan stared at Guan Nuanying's eloquent narration with widened eyes, feeling like there was thunder rumbling in his heart. The shock he felt was much greater than before. Only A-ranked disciples are seed disciples? The B-class clearly had so many disciples whose aptitudes and talents were not inferior to the A-class. And then the C-class inner sect? Ding-class outer sect. That little girl from the Ding family just now had extraordinary talent and fighting spirit, but now her position is only a part-time disciple. Gan Tianyan felt as if there was an obstacle in her understanding. She couldn't understand at all. As a senior member of the sect, she naturally understood that there was a limit to a person's energy. No matter how powerful a cultivator was, as a master, He could never teach hundreds or thousands of disciples at the same time. At most, he could only cultivate a limited number of disciples. In terms of the sect's emphasis, it was true that only the seed disciples could be taught and trained by their masters at any time, while the true disciples could only meet their masters in a unified lesson that was held once every few days. After that, the inner disciples, although they had the systematic inheritance of cultivation methods and martial skills, they basically couldn't see their teachers. Only the seed disciples or true disciples were responsible for answering questions, and the rest depended on their own understanding. Although the last disciples were disciples, most of the time, they had to do the logistics work of the sect, and even their normal cultivation time was very limited, not to mention the orthodox teaching. Therefore, the gap between the inherited disciples had always been like heaven and earth, and there was absolutely no such thing as comparing them to each other. Therefore, the residents of Nine Supremes' actions were understandable, and there was no room for criticism. However, the current situation was that the residents of Nine Supremes' disciples' talent was too high. Even the disciples from the D class and below were far superior to the disciples from the A class, B class, and C class sects, although they were weaker than the disciples from other sections. The Phoenix Cry sect, for example, was now the chief disciple of a middle-class Celestial Luck Banner sect, but the residents of Nine Supremes could compare to them in terms of the quality of their disciples. Gan Tianyan could not stand the sight of so many super geniuses having no status in the residents of Nine Supremes in the future, not even being able to meet their masters. There was only one thing that Gan Tianyan wanted to say now. It had been on the tip of her tongue for a long time, but she could not stop herself from saying it in the end. What a waste of God's gift! What a waste of God's gift! Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang pursed their lips at each other. They were well aware of the residents of Nine Supremes' current situation, but this was the only way they could deal with it temporarily. The disciples had to be restrained by the corresponding rules and regulations, or what else could they do? They could not even chase the residents of Nine Supremes' disciples away. The path of cultivation has always been treacherous. Only by going through layers of training and selection can one obtain true gold and jade. The residents of Nine Supremes will pick a day, every month, to organize a martial competition between the various sections. The winner will be able to enjoy the benefits of leveling up. To put it simply, the strong will rise and the mediocre will fall. Even if you're a genius, as long as you don't work hard, you'll only be a servant in the residents of Nine Supremes in the end. To the residents of Nine Supremes, geniuses are neither important nor valued. Only those who work hard are the targets that everyone in the residents of Nine Supremes pursues. Gan Tianyan was tearing up when she heard Ping Xiaoyi's final summary. She wanted to say aloud, "The Phoenix Cry sect values geniuses. Give us the geniuses that you don't want. We value them, we treasure them, we don't mind taking them all." She was too embarrassed to say it out loud. What difference was there between the Phoenix Cry sect and a garbage collector if she were to say it out loud? Although Gan Tianyan knew that it did not matter even if she had to bear this reputation, the Phoenix Cry sect, the top disciple of the middle-class Celestial Luck Banner, still valued their reputation. This is the Central Peaks Hall. This is the Central Peaks Drill Ground. This is the Central Peaks. This is the second peak, the third peak. Ping Xiaoyi introduced them one by one without hiding anything, making Gan Tianyan feel refreshed, especially when she stood at the highest point. The spiritual qi that came whistling towards her filled her with a sense of delight. Luoluo, the residence of Nine Supremes is not bad indeed. You're lucky you have a better eye. Jiang Luoluo nodded with a happy smile. The residence of Nine Supremes really has a lot of genius disciples. Gan Tianyan had been restless for a long time, and could not hold it in any longer. I know what I'm saying, but it's obvious that the residents of Nine Supremes can't take care of so many disciples. Instead of letting so many of them have a bleak future and a hopeless life, perhaps we can distribute some of them. Jiang Luoluo frowned awkwardly. Master, I don't have the final say on this, and it's not something I should say. Guanuanyang's calm voice came from the side. Actually, what you're saying is very kind, Senior. We're happy to see it happen. As long as the disciples you've taken a liking to are willing to join your sect, Senior Gon can take them away. Gon Tianyin was delighted. Are you serious? Absolutely, Guanuanyang said. Senior is our sister-in-law's master, so you're one of us. We shouldn't let our fertile water flow to an outsider. Perhaps, the disciples you've taken a liking to will have a better future than staying here. The only thing is Senior can't force them, and can't confuse their minds. The disciples must be willing. Of course. Gon Tianyin was relieved and beamed like a flower. I wonder if there's a limit to the number of disciples. If I take a liking to a dozen or 20 disciples, and they're still willing to join the Phoenix Cry sect, is your residence really willing to do that? Guanuanyang smiled faintly. To be honest, Senior, there are 9,736 such disciples in the valley not far from here. No matter how many you've taken a liking to, as long as they agree, Senior can take all the disciples who agree to leave at once. What he said seemed very confident, but was he really that confident? Gon Tianyin was a person like her. How could she not guess that Guanuanyang must have something to rely on when he said so? However, looking at Guanuanyang's determined and serious face, she could not bring herself to doubt the authenticity of his words. Very well, I appreciate your residence's generosity. Gon Tianyin was truly moved at this moment. If she had been joking about picking a few disciples to test the waters, then now, she would definitely put it into action. She smiled somewhat mockingly. If your noble family can casually abandon such a genius at any time, it would truly shock me. It's hard to believe, Guanuanyang said faintly. Perhaps Senior is more concerned about the disciples' talents, but my residence values the disciples' loyalty to the residents of 9 Supremes more. If some of them leave with Senior today, it's not certain that they won't leave with others in the future. I really don't care about such disciples. It's just a big wave washing away the sand. Guanuanyang said, Senior, feel free to persuade them. What you say makes sense. It's destined that many of the disciples who stay in the residence of 9 Supremes won't be able to get enough quality resources. It's not impossible for them to become the core disciples of other sections. To them it's a good thing. Over the next few days, Gon Tianyin was too embarrassed to trick the little fellows she had taken a liking to in the beginning. However, as time went by, the more she looked at them, the more she liked them. The more she looked at them, the more she was tempted. What was out of Gon Tianyin's expectation was that these little fellows' answers dealt a heavy blow to her even after she had asked them. I don't want to leave the residence of 9 Supremes. I'll stay here. I'm not going anywhere. Not going. It's good to stay here even if I can only be an outer disciple. I don't understand other places. That's right. You can stay here even if you're an errand boy. Isn't that great? Gon Tianyin asked dozens of people in disbelief. She had even purposely sought out the little fellows who were slightly less talented. But the final result was still the same. No one was willing to go with her. All the disciples' choices were the same. They would rather be an errand boy in the residence of 9 Supremes than go to another sect to be a seed disciple. Many of the disciples were so determined that they would live and die as members of the residence of 9 Supremes. Gon Tianyin could only feel frustrated in the face of such an answer. You little fellows have all been brainwashed. Gon Tianyin, who had tried many times, could only sigh sadly. She could only say that she had come at the wrong time. Her persuasion, trickery, and even bewitchment would only make choices that were more beneficial to them if they were adults who knew how to weigh the gains and losses. In spite of this, all her attempts were futile when she was faced with a bunch of children. She had said that it was good to go there, that they could become core disciples there, but they had blinked their big, cute eyes, obviously not knowing what a core disciple was. There were only 4 words deeply rooted in their little hearts. The residence of 9 Supremes was good. Then they were, this is the best place. There's nowhere better than here. I'm not going anywhere. Gon Tianyin was filled with melancholy in the face of such a situation, while Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang were rather speechless. To be fair, the residents of 9 Supremes had too many disciples now. They could not take care of all of them. If this went on, there would definitely be people who would be delayed. It was not an excuse for Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying to agree to Gan Tianyan's request. In spite of this, these little fellows were actually so resolute. Both of them were surprised and helpless. After several failed attempts of enticement, Gan Tianyan sighed and stopped trying to persuade them. It would be futile to try again now, and it would be a disgrace to her own reputation and position. Everything else would have to wait for Yin Yang's return, and for her sect leader's junior sister to come and negotiate with Yin Yang and the other leaders. In the days that followed, Gan Tianyan and Jiang Luoluo stayed in almost every drill ground in the residence of 9 Supremes. In the beginning, watching the children practice, correcting their movements and answering their questions, they were all gifted and talented disciples who could understand with just a hint. Even though it was a little tough, they were willing to endure it. However, as the situation continued, Gan Tianyan truly understood what Guanuanying meant when he said that he could not take care of all of them. There were indeed too many. Despite Gan Tianyan's level of cultivation base, it was easy for her to instruct these children. However, when there were so many of them, the change in quantity had turned into a qualitative change. There were so many that she could not take care of them all. There were a few drill grounds in the residence of 9 Supremes that occupied dozens of acres of land. The progress of each disciple was different. Naturally, there were no disciples who were completely at the same pace. To other sects, perhaps they were more troubled by not being able to find good talents to groom and train. But to the residents of 9 Supremes, it was the sheer number of geniuses that troubled them. One by one, the little fellows trained and competed in martial arts. They were all exceptionally serious, fully focused, and neat. Their little faces were solemn. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Over the past few days, apart from guiding many children in their cultivation, Gan Tianyan had only said these few words. He had not said anything else. Jiang Luoluo had secretly rolled her eyes countless times. Dong Qitian, who was hidden on the higher floor, looked at Gan Tianyan coldly, sneering inwardly. Ignorant woman. You only know that it's not bad. Actually, you won't be able to tell what's really not bad with your knowledge and experience. Your cultivation base is too low after all, and your vision is too shallow. Dong Qitian sighed. So many people had come and gone, but he was the only one who had the unique insight. Chapter 1154. Watching Gan Tianyan's futile attempts to persuade the children to join the Phoenix Cry sect, Dong Qitian could only roll his eyes to express his disdain. Poach. How? During the time these children had been admitted to the residence of 9 Supremes, other things aside, they had been completely brainwashed. The residents of 9 Supremes had rescued them from their most difficult days. This sentiment could not be swayed with mere words. Poach. I'll consider it your win if you can poach one. You're good. However, now that this girl is here to watch these children practice and give them pointers, this old man is much more relaxed. Speaking of which, now that there's someone working, shouldn't I go out and have some fun? There shouldn't be any ignorant fellows coming to attack in a short period of time. Even if someone did, with Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanying guarding and Gan Tianyan, and Jiang Luoluo accompanying them, ordinary sects would not be able to do anything to them. Indeed, he could go out and have a walk without any worries. On Yin Yang's side, it was already the 3rd day since he had entered the demonic realm. In these 3 days, Yin Yang had encountered a total of 13 battles. In each of these 13 battles, the mystical beasts he had to face were a level stronger than Wu Yu and the others outside. Basically, Yin Yang had to give it his all in each battle, even activating all his trump cards and exhausting both his mystical qi and the endless divine art. Only then could he defeat the enemy and win by a hair's breadth. In the first few rounds, he had to perform the first 5 styles of Destiny Blade at least 17 to 18 times to be able to handle it. In the outside world, there were not many people who could force him to use all 5 styles. However, this was not the scariest part. After Yin Yang killed the first beast, the subsequent beasts that came after him had increased their strength exponentially, becoming more and more difficult to deal with than the last. As he stayed longer, Yin Yang realized that the demonic realm, did not seem to be any different from the outside world. There were mountains, forests, and valleys as far as the eye could see, and there were endless beasts. Other than that, there were many treasures of heaven and earth that grew everywhere. Delighted at the prospect, Yun-yang naturally tried to pluck them, or teleport them away to see if he could bring them out. Originally, he thought that the existence of this realm was meant to test cultivators, and everything in this kind of space was mostly illusory. In other words, everything he saw now was not real. This understanding seemed to be more in line with what he had seen. After all, the heaven and earth treasures that could be seen everywhere were not only in shocking numbers, but their age was even more shocking as well. How could Yin-yang dare to believe a dozen or 20 stalks of 10,000-year-old spiritual plants so easily? Trying to pick, collect, and teleport was just a precaution. However, after coming into contact with the spiritual herb, the extremely realistic touch and fragrance made Yin-yang think about it. He decided to try eating a few of them, and he could clearly feel the surging medicinal power in his body. These spiritual plants are real. In other words, maybe we can take them out. Yin-yang looked at the stalk of lingji in his hand that was crimson in color and exuding a unique fragrance, deep in thought. The spiritual plant in Yin-yang's hand was a stalk of cloud Ganoderma. As its name suggested, this lingji was not like the commonly seen species that was hard. Instead, it was soft all over, as if it was weightless to the touch. It felt almost weightless when held in his hand. In fact, this kind of lingji was a dream item among the spiritual plants. Yin-yang had been searching for it for a long time, asking the General Commerce League for help but to no avail. Never would he have thought that he would find one not long after entering the demonic spiritual realm. Of course, the first thing that came into his hands was to digest the good stuff. Yin-yang ate 2 stalks of cloud Ganoderma and felt the abundant medicinal power flowing in his meridians. The authenticity of the spiritual plant was confirmed once again. It was edible. It was useful. Then, did it mean that he could bring it back as well? Therefore, wherever Yin-yang passed by, the raiders of all but God's elegance of plucking the feathers of a swallow as it passed by reappeared once more. Along the way, there was nothing that this leader Yin did not want as long as it was a spiritual plant. Even the piece of land where the cloud Ganoderma grew was kept into his deific consciousness space by leader Yin alone. This was probably what it meant to be swept clean. Just then, a gust of demonic wind blew, and another demonic beast appeared in front of Yin-yang. Yin-yang was already used to this. Without a word, he charged forward with his saber. With a loud clang, the demonic beast roared and blocked the divine edge with its claw. Then it pounced forward and launched a fierce counterattack. This one is a notch stronger than the previous one. It's indeed linked to my current highest combat power, no less. Yin-yang wanted to cry, but had no tears to shed. Since entering this place, other than the first demonic beast that was slightly weaker, the beasts that came after that were stronger than the previous one. Moreover, the beasts that came to attack were all stuck at the level of their peak combat power. Such a situation naturally formed a result. One could win against the demonic beast, but to truly win, one must not go all out. One must exhaust all one's strength, and only take down the beast when one's strength was exhausted. It was the same every time. One must exhaust every ounce of strength in one's body to be able to kill the opponent. On the third day, the situation continued to develop in a bad direction. Now, it was no longer a matter of exhausting one's strength to defeat the opponent, but one needed to make a reasonable distribution of one's strength to pass the stage. Only by using the strength that should be used in the right place could one kill the demonic beast. Any slight carelessness would cause the situation to take a turn for the worse, to the point where one would lose control. After that, one could only retreat in defeat. For example, you should have used a little more strength to slash the demonic beast and cause it to be seriously injured. However, you retracted that strength in preparation for a sneak attack from the demonic beast. Then, you would fall into a disadvantageous position in this battle because you used less strength. Then, the disadvantageous position would turn into a defeat. Once that happened, it would be out of control, and you might even be completely defeated. Yes, it was this precise, this extreme. There was no room for error. After the first demon beast, the strength of every demon beast was at a very awkward and delicate point. Although you have the strength to defeat this demon beast, you have to be extremely cautious and serious in the battle. You have to work hard to accurately adjust your own qian-qi. Only then can you kill the opponent. Any slight negligence would cause the situation to go out of control, and one would lose. Yun-yang felt like he was a piece of sword embryo, and the endless beasts were like a sledgehammer hammering him continuously, hammering out all the impurities in his body. Every battle was a process of exhausting all of one's strength. Resting after the battle could restore all the lost strength in a very short period of time. And there would also be a small increase, like a 100-foot pole going a step further. Yun-yang's cultivation base, under these small increments, had successfully crossed the beginner second-grade Saint King to the intermediate level in just a few days. It was a remarkable speed. However, the demonic beasts he encountered were also getting stronger and stronger as Yun-yang improved. I understand now. This realm is truly a holy land for cultivation. The demonic beasts in this realm will become stronger as the cultivators become stronger, forming a virtuous cycle. The cultivators who enter this realm will improve at a godly speed in a relatively short period of time, advancing at a tremendous pace. As long as you fight with all your might and win, it's equivalent to breaking through a small limit, and you'll also get the most direct training and cultivation. This has long been evident in the small increment of cultivation base after each killing of a demonic beast. These small increments, when accumulated, will be the most frightening yet most gratifying progress. Even the barrier of a realm will hardly be an obstacle in such a cultivation atmosphere. Yun-yang was pleasantly surprised as he had an epiphany. I really don't know who set up such a marvelous realm, to be able to construct such a precise and incredible arrangement that is actually just right. No matter what situation the cultivators are in, they can adjust themselves accordingly. Such an arrangement is truly ingenious and unimaginable. Such an arrangement is a great opportunity for all of us in the residence of 9 Supremes to improve ourselves greatly. Dancing on the tip of a blade at every moment, hovering between life and death. As long as we can bear the burden, as long as our fighting spirit and will are not destroyed, we'll be able to cultivate further and improve at every moment. It's a perfect fit for the Demiurge Flawed 10 and the others who are known for their willpower. The only pity now is that I can't contact Wuchen and the others. I can't meet anyone here at all. It's like I'm alone in this realm. I only hope that those little fellows don't forget my usual teachings and fight the demonic beasts with the most positive attitude. Yun-yang closed his eyes, making use of the gap he had just gained from killing the demonic beasts to adjust his breath and recover. According to his experience, the next wave of demonic beasts should come in 2 hours. Since he had entered this place, including the one just now, Yun-yang had gone through 14 battles and gained a total of 11 demonic beast skins, 17 complete demonic beast tendons, 11 demonic pills, and various materials from the demonic beasts. Despite Yun-yang's cautiousness and the many trump cards he had, there were still 3 demonic beasts that had withstood Yun-yang's divine will and escaped, dragging their wounded bodies away. As the saying went, one could infer the general trend from one small clue. The difficulty of fighting the demonic beasts here was evident. After Yun-yang finished regulating his breathing, he realized that there was still some time before the attack of the demonic beasts, but he did not hesitate to sit still. He crossed the bamboo forest and crossed the river to the other side of the river, where he saw a small tree swaying in the wind. The small tree looked as if it was carved out of white jade, and the leaves on it were purple in color. There was only one fruit on the top of the tree, and it was golden and eye-catching. Was that the golden vein fruit? The golden vein fruit was an extremely rare spiritual fruit in the bound of universe. Its effect was different from most of the treasures of heaven and earth. Compared to most treasures of heaven and earth that could increase the cultivation base of the consumer, this fruit would double the flexibility of the consumer's meridians and mental strength after consumption. Its effect was amazing. It was definitely a good thing. Yun-yang took a deep breath, and did not choose to fly over to pluck it immediately. Instead, he stopped and observed the surroundings carefully. According to the lessons learned from the past few times, Yun-yang could be sure that there must be powerful demonic beasts protecting such treasures of heaven and earth. In other words, when the treasures of heaven and earth were found, it was equivalent to entering the rhythm of battle. If greed blinded one's mind for even a moment, one would fall into a hopeless situation in the blink of an eye. Although he did not know if he would really die here, the spiritual materials in this place were real, and so were the remains of the demonic beasts. Why would death not be real? Yun-yang looked around, and abruptly swung his saber. A gust of wind from his saber shot into the calm river. The next moment, the surface of the river surged and waves shot out from the water like snow-white arrows. Then something that looked like a fish, a cow, a horse, a snake, but not a snake, sprang out of the water. Its two large eyes were glinting menacingly as it stared at Yun-yang. Yun-yang's heart skipped a beat when he saw the monster. He frowned as he pondered. It was another fellow that he did not know. The monster charged forward, howling. Yun-yang went up to meet it with a thoughtful expression. Just like before, he fought back and forth, slowly searching for the opponent's weakness. He was neither impatient nor impatient, fighting steadily and surely. The battle lasted for a full 4 hours. Yun-yang's last slash shone brightly. The moment the monster's head was chopped off, his last breath of energy was exhausted. He fell to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. It's still the same. Yun-yang used this battle to completely prove his previous thoughts. These demonic beasts were indeed maintained at the same level of his pinnacle combat power, under some kind of restriction in this space. In other words, in this realm, he had to break through a limit in every battle to have the hope of defeating his next opponent. Furthermore, the standard of his combat power was set based on the skills he had displayed. The battle prowess he had displayed included his movement techniques, footwork, saber techniques, sword techniques, mystical chi, the power of the endless divine art, and even the sharpness of the blade of heaven's will. Everything had been accounted for. In other words, if he lost the divine edge or any of the above, he would not be a match for these demonic beasts. Amazing. Really extreme. The only word that could be used to describe the accuracy of Yin-Yang's perception and judgment of this space was terrifyingly poor. After this battle, even you yourself may not feel that your battle strength is a little stronger than before. However, when you meet the demonic beasts again, they have already calculated the slight increase in your strength. You can only kill the demonic beasts when you're on the brink of death. Yin-Yang's condition was dire. He really did not have much energy left, causing half of his body to lie in the water, panting heavily. It was only after a long while that he had the strength to move, but the first thing he did was to regulate his breathing. After about an hour, Yun-yang, who had finished his recuperation, stood up and walked over to pluck the gold vein fruit, keeping it in his hands. As soon as the golden vein fruit was plucked, the white jade-like tree trunk withered rapidly and turned into powder in an instant. Only the fruit fell into Yun-yang's hands. With a single thought, Yun-yang had already sent the fruit into his deific consciousness space. Although the gold vein fruit was rare, and its effect was remarkable, it was still better to send it into his deific consciousness space to see if Emmy could cultivate it in the long run. After all, there was only one fruit. If he ate it directly, there would be no more. Ayaya! Emmy's pliable vines caught the gold mahogany fruit, beaming with delight. If one were to say who had gained the most since entering this mysterious space, it would undoubtedly be Emmy. Countless amounts of demonic beasts' flesh, countless amounts of demonic beasts' inner elixirs, and countless years of treasured resources. All of them had entered the deific consciousness space. As soon as the flesh entered the space, it was buried by Emmy on the spot, grumbling incessantly. It meant, you should have sent all these things in the first moment you killed them. Why did you stay outside for so long? So much of the essence in the flesh has been wasted, do you know? Yun-yang was speechless upon hearing this. Big brother, I'm still a human. There will be times when I'm exhausted. Do you know how much energy I used to kill those demonic beasts? I'm really exhausted. On the other side, Shi Wuchen, Luo Dajiang, and the others had also swiftly deduced the mystery of this trial journey with their rich martial world experience. Everyone's eyes were shining, their bodies filled with endless energy. Although they were exhausted after each battle, they could not wait to immediately enter the next cycle after killing a demonic beast. After all, the spiritual chi here was abundant, comparable to that of an upper-class sect. Basically, they were in a state of recovery and improvement at all times. It had only been 5 days, but Luo Dajiang could already feel a significant improvement in his cultivation base. Initially, he would need at least 6 hours to recover his energy after his cultivation base was exhausted. But after coming to this realm and cultivating several times, he only needed less than 4 hours to recover. This was evidence of the improvement of his cultivation base and the improvement of his self-recovery ability. This knowledge made him even more motivated. The Demiurge Flawed Ten's cultivation base was similar, their life experiences were similar, and their fighting spirit and determination were similar as well. Luo Dajiang's gain was similar to that of others like Shi Wuqian, Ren Qingquang, and Lan Ruojuan. They were pleasantly surprised and devoted themselves to killing the mystical beasts. Compared to Yun Yang, Shi Wuqian, and the other senior masters of the Residence of Nine Supremes who had improved their cultivation base by leaps and bounds, the disciples who were not with their masters and were fighting on their own seemed to be in a miserable state. Yin Xiuxin was startled by the first demonic beast she encountered after entering the realm. Despite her fear, the little girl did not panic and managed to stabilize herself. It took her a whole day to fight the beast with all her might before she finally killed it. When it came to the second beast, it still took her a whole morning. Although the efficiency was not low, with Yin Xiuxin's cultivation base, it was by no means fast. In the next 6 days, the little girl only killed a total of 4 demonic beasts. During this period, she even made a mistake and was chased by a demonic beast for a long time. It was a very miserable experience. However, after a series of battles, the little girl slowly figured out the pattern. In the beginning, after killing the demonic beasts, she only focused on recuperating and guarding against the subsequent attacks of the demonic beasts. She no longer paid attention to the beasts that she had killed. However, when she killed a mystical beast, she accidentally found a demonic beast's inner core. Only then did she realize that the demonic beasts she encountered were real, and the inner core was even more real. Naturally, she would not let it go. If the inner core of the demonic beast was real, then the heaven and earth treasures she saw along the way were naturally real as well. Regardless of whether they were useful or not, and whether she knew them or not, she just stuffed them all into her spatial ring. It was already an exhilarating honor to kill the demonic beasts that were traveling side by side with her own strength. Now she could even collect so many heaven and earth treasures. It was wonderful, wonderful. It felt so good. Chapter 1155. After several battles, Yin Xiuxin's innocence had long disappeared. Now, with a sword in one hand and a guard in the other, she moved forward cautiously, not forgetting to look around to see if there were any treasures that she had missed. The situation of the female disciples was similar. At the beginning, they were chased like chickens and dogs, but after some twists and turns, they managed to stabilize their footing and slowly discovered the abnormality. In other words, the process was different, and the efficiency was slightly different. But the experience of the male disciples was completely different. Those who were more experienced, such as Bai Yexing and Sun Mingxiu, had already discovered the subtlety of this realm during the second battle. However, these two had taken it for granted that this realm was set up as a trial, and since the cultivation base of the demon beasts was maintained at the same level as theirs, it was definitely not real. So how could they gain anything after the battle? Bai Yexing's situation was better. When he killed the 5th demonic beast, he accidentally touched a demon core and realized the truth, and he regretted what he had done. Sun Mingxiu, on the other hand, killed all the way and did not collect a single demon core from the beginning to the end. He did not even take any of the treasures that he encountered. He had entered a mountain of treasures but returned empty-handed. Sometimes, one who was too steady and rational might lose a lot. That was probably what happened to Sun Mingxiu. compared to the two before him, whose Xiaofan still maintained his usual good luck, reaping huge profits along the way. Starting from the beginning, he reaped the harvest cleanly, leaving not even a blade of grass untouched. He was even more thorough than Yun Yang. The boy had 3 spatial items with him, but they were all stuffed to the brim. However, no matter what happened, the cultivation base of the residence of 9 Supreme's disciples was soaring. A few girls were so focused on guarding against the attack of the demonic beasts that they were muddle-headed throughout the whole process. It was not until a certain point when the barriers in their bodies disappeared with a boom, and they broke through to a higher level, that they suddenly snapped out of their daze. How did I break through without knowing it? Time flew by as they broke through and fought. During the whole month, only the first few days were a little painful and frightened. After all, the huge size and ferocious appearance of the demonic beasts were still very intimidating. However, as time passed, the beasts they encountered became more and more ferocious and powerful. However, the fear they had in the beginning disappeared completely. Right now, everyone was thinking about one thing. What kind of demonic beast would I encounter today? And how much of my cultivation would I be able to display? Although killing demonic beasts was physically taxing, and after each battle, one would be half dead from exhaustion, but every victory would result in a lot of spirit materials and demonic cores. If one was lucky, one could even obtain some other things. Not only were there demonic beasts and spiritual plants in this secret realm, but there were also many mineral resources that were hard to find in the outside world. After entering the secret territory, every day that passed, all the disciples would feel, how did time pass so quickly? Another day had passed. The sky was black and white. One day passed. Another day passed. Another day passed. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 20th day. Right now, Yun Yang's cultivation base had steadily increased to the pinnacle of 3rd level Saint King. He was only a step away from advancing to 4th level Saint King. However, he had encountered an inexplicable bottleneck here. In fact, Yun Yang had reached this level 3 days ago. However, after 3 days, no matter how much he battled, exhausted himself, it was of no help to the current bottleneck. His cultivation base did not increase in the slightest. Yun Yang knew that he had probably reached the end of his cultivation this time. It would be futile to force himself to continue cultivating. Decisively, he began to train his self-control. Whenever an accident happened, he would discover it in time and solve the current accident in the most ingenious and effortless way. Slowly, Yun Yang integrated this realization into Saber Truth, Destiny Blade. There was one time when a yellow golden black tiger suddenly appeared. Yun Yang swung his saber, intending to block the enemy's edge and give himself a chance to turn the situation around. Unexpectedly, the moment the gigantic yellow golden black tiger's claws came into contact with the divine edge, it howled and its muscular body slid to the side abruptly. When it landed, it even surged forward uncontrollably. Yun Yang's eyes shone. Is this leveraging force to counter force? Leveraging force to counter force was a technique that appeared in many techniques. It was almost the same everywhere, but the intricacies of it were not something anyone could learn. At least, it was impossible to master without a certain level of experience and actual combat. This required impeccable control of strength and countless times of wandering between life and death. Only then could one deflect the incoming force, divert it, or even reverse it completely to attack the incoming enemy. This was a trick that would be difficult to achieve if it were not for countless experiments and practice. Yun Yang's experience during this period of time had given him the opportunity to explore and practice this possibility. As Yun Yang's thoughts raced, he purposely emptied his mind. The saber in his hand swung left and right. Towards the end, the trajectory of each swing was a circular arc. There was another soft clang. The yellow tiger looked at the place where it had landed with eyes full of fear. That place had already deviated from its target by at least 30 feet. Furthermore, my tail. How did it get cut off? With a howl, the yellow tiger ran away with its tail between its legs. It was too frightening. A gust of black wind blew, and the yellow tiger disappeared without a trace. Yin-Yang did not give chase. He really did not have the mood to pay attention to the yellow metal tiger. Instead, he was deep in thought. His sudden inspiration had not only caused the yellow metal tiger's heavy pounce to deviate from its intended direction, but he had also followed it up with a slash of his saber, cutting off the yellow metal tiger's tail without any hindrance with an untraceable slash. That casual slash just now was a variation of the merciless blade of the Destiny Blade. But previously, he had clearly chopped at the yellow tiger's tail many times, and it seemed like he had only managed to draw some blood. How could that seemingly casual slash cause such great damage? Why was this so? Was it because the swing felt smooth and comfortable? Yin-Yang frowned, recalling the swing he had executed just now. It replayed in his mind no less than 30 to 50 times. From the deflecting force, to the bearing of the force, to the borrowing of the force, to the casual half-turn of his body, and the casual swing of his hand. The divine edge. Heaven's will has always been high and difficult to question. Heaven's will has always been elusive. Yin-Yang's eyes grew brighter. A glimmer of enlightenment rose quietly in his heart. For the next 6 days, Yin-Yang had to fight 4 or more times a day in this manner. The intense battles allowed him to comprehend the techniques he had just learned. As the cycle repeated itself, Yin-Yang gradually realized that his saber truth, Destiny Blade, was evolving in another direction. While the movements of the saber grew more agile, it also grew more forceful. There are rules and trajectories between heaven and earth. Once the saber moves in line with the flow of heaven's will, it will be indestructible and unbreakable. As the saying goes, the path of my saber is like cutting cloth with a saber. No matter how sharp the blade is, I still have to use a lot of strength to chop the cloth, but I might not be able to separate it neatly. However, as long as I find the right direction and aim, I can easily split it with a very light force. Furthermore, if I allow the saber to use the flexibility of the cloth to cut it, it will only be easier to separate the cloth. Through constant combat practice, Yin-Yang increased his understanding bit by bit, improving and perfecting the saber technique bit by bit. In the first 2 days, his saber technique was choppy and sluggish, and there were even mystical beasts that escaped from his hands. However, as time went on, the saber gradually became more complete, and there were no more mistakes. One by one, the mystical beasts charged at him. With the brand new Destiny Blade, Yin-Yang dealt with them with ease. From the difficulty of dealing with them to killing them with a few casual slashes, the whole process took only 2 days. When the brand new Destiny Blade was completed, Yin-Yang killed a total of 6 mystical beasts in 1 day, and each of these beasts was at the pinnacle of the 4th grade Saint King level. Yin-Yang was still only at the pinnacle of the 3rd grade Saint King level. In other words, Yin-Yang had surpassed them by a whole level and killed mystical beasts that were almost invincible compared to humans of the same level. According to the common knowledge of the Bound of Universe, the current Yin-Yang basically had no difficulty against ordinary 1st grade Saint Venerables. At this time, there were still 4 days left before the end of the trial. Yin-Yang's next opponent was a 1st grade Saint Venerable's demonic beast, Rolling Sky Roar. In this battle, both sides were in an extremely desperate state. Although Yin-Yang had the enhancement of the newly cultivated technique, under the absolute suppression of the level and the tyrannical power of Rolling Sky Roar, his effectiveness plummeted, and he was unable to defeat the enemy. Technique, even if it's the purest technique, is still only suitable for enemies that are 1 or 2 levels higher than me. Then, when facing humans, I can probably deal with enemies that are 3 levels higher than me. But when facing a mystical beast that is 2 levels higher than me, it's beyond my limit. Is it to remind me of my position by arranging such a mystical beast to appear here in this realm? Or perhaps to let me know my own limits? But this kind of understanding is probably only reasonable for me. According to the common knowledge of the Bound of Universe's practitioners, when facing a weaker enemy, it's natural to crush them all the way. There's no need to use techniques at all. On the other hand, when facing a strong enemy, using techniques to deal with the situation is, in essence, no different from showing weakness. The so-called techniques are only a way to win and defeat. This is an experience that must be firmly remembered. I can't instill this understanding into all my disciples. It's too irresponsible to simply copy it according to my standards, and it's very dangerous. Yin Yang pondered and summarized in his heart, coming up with a clear position for his current comprehensive ability. However, the battle against the sweeping heaven roar was still ongoing. Even though Yin Yang knew that his chances of winning were slim, he had never retreated a single inch. Each time, he would charge forward with the fullest, most spirited will to fight. Again and again, he felt the opponent's powerful strength, clashing again and again. Of course, Yin Yang was not charging forward blindly. He was using this method to search for battle techniques when facing a strong opponent that surpassed his current limit. On the second last day, Rolling Sky Roar was finally forced to retreat by him for the first time. They were evenly matched, and it was no longer Yin Yang who was completely suppressed. Rolling Sky Roar glared at Yin Yang with its large bell-like eyes, as if it could not understand how this weak human had become so strong this time. It was at this moment that Yin Yang suddenly realized that his state of rapid recovery and improvement, after being depleted a few days ago, had returned once again. This discovery made Yin Yang even more excited. There was not much time left. He had to utilize this rebirth opportunity in the most proactive way possible. Therefore, each time he recovered quickly, he would immediately charge towards the seven-colored vine guarded by Rolling Sky Roar. The seven-colored vine was guarded by Rolling Sky Roar. Anyone who wanted to obtain it would have to defeat Rolling Sky Roar to explore it. On the other hand, this item was equivalent to Rolling Sky Roar's private property. If others wanted it, they would have to fight it. Yin Yang had used this as an opportunity to provoke it again and again. Of course, the rainbow vine itself was something that Yin Yang truly desired as well. The vine's effect was different from ordinary spiritual materials. It was an extremely unique weaponsmithing material. Its powder could be blended with any kind of metal, any metal that was incompatible with water and fire. As long as the powder of the rainbow vine was put in, it would blend seamlessly. Even if it was the mystical heaven gold and earth demon silver, two materials that would explode when they were put together, they would be able to coexist peacefully with the addition of the seven-colored vine powder. Yin Yang believed that as long as he brought the seven-colored vine back, the many rare metals that he had previously collected would be put to use immediately. Now, under Emmy's continuous refinement, all the rare metals were basically left with the most essential parts. Even the stellar raw gold, that had been the size of a small hill, was now only a lump the size of 2 to 3 people. However, due to the sheer amount and variety, there were quite a number of such lumps of metal essence in the space. The scene when they were piled up was quite a sight to behold. Rolling Sky Roar was very annoyed by the little person in front of it. As a powerful demonic beast, it only had one territory, and this area with the seven-colored vine as the core was its territory. Although it didn't know what the treasure it was guarding was, or what it was used for, its instincts told it that this was its territory, and this was its thing. Since it was its thing, it couldn't let others take it away for no reason. However, that weak human, no, it should be the fellow who was originally weak, but was now growing stronger. He charged over tirelessly, launching wave after wave of attacks. I need to rest too, okay? I'm made of flesh and blood too. Why is a human like you recovering faster than me? Genius in a second. Remember website address, mobile version M. Chapter 1156. Please take a leave of absence from I Am Supreme. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 1157. The heaven-encompassing roar was extremely frustrated. It had not even been 2 hours, and the fellow had come again. Another 2 hours and the fellow had come again. Every time, he would be able to beat him to the point that he would flee for his life, but he would return in less than an hour. And it had only been 2 hours. 2 hours was not even enough for it to recover from its fatigue. The heaven-encompassing roar was helpless and dissatisfied with the current situation. However, it could not leave it be. It could only fight with all its might, its heart even more determined. I'd like to see how many times you can recover. Don't ever give me a chance. As long as I can pinpoint an opening, your father will kill you, shatter you into pieces and grind your bones into dust. However, once, twice, thrice, many times later, Yun Yang maintained a state of rapid recovery. Once he had recovered, he would not wait any longer and would fight again immediately. Once he felt that his energy had been depleted, he would escape at once, never giving the heaven-encompassing roar a chance to kill him. Later on, the heaven-coiling roar's condition worsened. It squatted on a rock and panted heavily, the color of its fur dimming. Because of this, Yun Yang cultivated to recover hundreds of feet in front of the heaven-coiling roar. Obviously, Yun Yang could already confirm that when he was at the end of his rope, the opponent's mystical beast was not much better off than he was. Even if it was not at the end of its rope, it was close to the end of its rope. Basically, when they had reached their limits, they would have no more energy left to move. There was no longer any possibility of the opponent killing him. The heaven-encompassing roar was panting heavily, staring at the human in front of it. It was angry, anxious, and hateful. You said you can't beat me. Why aren't you King leaving already? What do you mean by wasting your time here? If this goes on, I won't be able to hold on any longer. Besides, how can a human like you recover so quickly? Are you still human? You're clearly trying to piss this beast to death. Especially this time. I'm about to die from panting. It watched as the human's breathing gradually steadied. Slowly he opened his eyes and smiled at it. The heaven-encompassing roar's eyes were red. As expected, the human stood up again. The heaven-encompassing roar was trembling. It was filled with grief and indignation. Are you still human? How can you recover faster than me, a beast king? Fine. I admit that you are worse than a beast, okay? When Yun Yang was done with his recuperation, he stood up and shook his head before he pulled out the divine edge with a clang and charged forward with a loud cry. The coiling heaven centipede roared. It forcefully raised its spirit and charged forward. Even if this king is not in his best condition, this king will not be afraid of you. But this time, the heaven-sweeping roar was getting more and more out of sorts. It seemed like this human was getting stronger and stronger, to the point where he could threaten this king. Every slash that landed on its body was extremely painful. Wasn't this proof of this point? After fighting for less than a quarter of an hour, the heaven-sweeping centipede let out a loud roar, and a huge circle of fire appeared all over its body. Yun Yang took a step back, holding his saber with one hand, fully focused. This was the killer move heaven-sweeping roar was about to be used. This technique had caused Yun Yang to suffer quite a number of losses previously. He had almost been defeated by it during their second encounter. However, what was out of his expectations was that after the heaven-sweeping centipede roared, it actually jumped out of the battle with a whoosh and fled without looking back. It even abandoned the spiritual medicine that it had guarded for so long. Yun Yang obviously did not expect this to happen. He was stunned and did not follow up for a long time. CKMe. You are a 4th level Saint King Pinnacle Cultivation Base. A demon king who is half a step to Supreme Saint. You actually ran away with a feint. This is too illogical. It really makes me sprain my waist. However, Yun Yang was already very satisfied to be able to defeat the heaven-sweeping centipede and obtain the rainbow vine. Even though the enemy had left, Yun Yang did not slack off. He went forward to collect the rainbow vine and even dug out a large piece of rock where the vine grew, moving a small mound that was a few hundred feet wide and a few hundred feet deep into his deific consciousness space. Emmy was shocked by the scene. What in the world had come in? There were only 30 days to cultivate in the arcane realm. No matter how reluctant it was, the wheel of time would never stop moving. It had already reached the last day of the arcane realm. It was also on this last day that Yun Yang, who had just defeated the Supreme Saint King, heaven-sweeping centipede, was quietly waiting for the final moment to arrive. To Yun Yang, he had gained too much in this arcane realm and was no longer greedy. Therefore, on the last day, he did not deliberately search for the whereabouts of other mystical beasts, nor did he harvest any more heaven and earth treasures. However, just as he was calming down and thinking about his gains during this period of time, he was shocked to feel the chi in his body suddenly surging, almost uncontrollable. The qi and blood in his body continued to surge, gradually climbing to a certain peak. At that moment, his entire body was filled with a feeling like it was about to explode. Then, in that instant, the meridian barrier in a certain part of his body suddenly shattered. A large amount of mystical qi, which had been unusually abundant and had nowhere to vent, took this opportunity to rush out, surging violently. He had broken through to the 4th level of Saint King. Yun-yang suddenly felt like he was floating. The eternal restraint of the earth seemed to have disappeared at this moment. There was a common understanding among high-level cultivators in the bound of universe. It was extremely difficult to advance from the 3rd level to the 4th level of Saint King. It was even more difficult than ascending from the 4th level to the Supreme Saint King. This was because this was a bottleneck in the path of cultivation. It required cultivation base, opportunity, and providence to reach a critical point in order to have a chance to cross over. Purely increasing cultivation base and grinding effort would not allow one to break through the barrier of the 3rd level of Saint King. Yun-yang was pleasantly surprised by this breakthrough, but he quickly adjusted his state of mind to carefully appreciate the current unique atmosphere. Feeling the surging mystical qi in his body, he instantly determined that his current ability had increased by almost 3 times as compared to before. A feeling of power that he had never felt before arose spontaneously and was difficult to erase. For a moment, he even dared to assert that if he were to fight with the rolling heaven centipede in his current state, he could take down the Supreme Saint-level demonic beast within 10 moves. Compared to Yin-Yang's high spirits and contentment, Emmy in the space was not far behind. It was comparing something and even squeaking from time to time, but its tone was very doubtful. Yin-Yang's heart skipped a beat as he focused his gaze and saw that Emmy was focusing on 2 piles of round items in front of it. On one side, there were hundreds of mystical beasts' mystical cores. On the other side, there were only about a dozen of them. They were the mystical cores of the demonic beasts that Yun-Yang had obtained in this arcane realm. Speaking of mystical cores and demonic cores, Yun-Yang could not tell the difference between the two just from the appearance alone. They looked the same and did not emit any aura, so it was naturally difficult to distinguish them. However, Emmy had clearly noticed the difference between the two, and was using its vines to fiddle with the cores, looking through them one by one. Immediately after, a black demonic mist was suddenly emitted from one of the demonic cores, and a powerful force rose and spread out. The countless heterogeneous and malevolent forces that were mixed within it were all on full display. The aura that emerged from the other mystical core, on the other hand, was neutral and peaceful. It would not be a problem to use it for cultivation. If the two were to be compared from this point, the power contained within the demonic core was naturally greater, but it was not suitable for cultivation. While the power contained within the mystical core was slightly lesser, as long as one's cultivation base reached the level of a saint, the gradual absorption of the power within would be sufficient to boost the cultivation progress of a cultivator. Perhaps this is the fundamental difference between the mystical core and the demonic core. Yin-Yang came to a realization. Perhaps it's also the difference between mystical beasts and demonic beasts. Before he could examine the difference between the mystical core and the demonic core, Yin-Yang suddenly felt the world spinning around him. The scene in front of him changed as if the stars had moved, and countless sceneries flashed past his eyes. The next moment, light bloomed in front of him again, but he was already outside the arcane realm. The place where they stood was the battlefield for the Battle of the Middle-Class Celestial Luck Banners on Mount Pentatir, which was also the starting point for entering the secret realm. However, Mount Pentatir was now empty, without a single soul in sight. As Yin-Yang's thoughts raced, silhouettes flashed and appeared again. Shi Wuchen and the others appeared in front of him one after another. All of them wore a look of unsatiated joy. Yin-Yang glanced at them. Not a single one of them was missing, and each of them was in high spirits and full of enthusiasm. Obviously, everyone had benefited a lot from the arcane realm this time, and their cultivation base had improved greatly. Yin-Yang did not waste any time, and waved his hand. Let's go. Let's go home, we'll talk as we walk. At Mount Pentatir, not being able to see through everyone's real cultivation base was a form of protection during the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. But now it was a bit of a blindfold. The people in front of them were all on the same side, so it was better to leave this place, where they could not see through each other's cultivation base, as soon as possible. Along the way, everyone was talking at once, almost rushing to proclaim their achievements and gains. Sher Wuchen was the first to speak. My cultivation base has advanced to the 4th tier, Saint King. That's the first time I've achieved such a cultivation base, isn't it? Luo Dajiang smiled. What a coincidence. Me too. Then, me too, was heard one after another. Ren Qingquang and the others' cultivation base had also reached the 4th tier, Saint King. In terms of progress alone, they had actually caught up with Sher Wuchen, who had the highest cultivation base. Yun Yang glanced at the crowd, his face beaming with joy as he said in a low voice, "Everyone has advanced by 2 tiers in this arcane realm, which is really good. But there's one thing. All the treasures of heaven and earth, and the demonic cores obtained inside must be handed over to the sect to record your contribution." Alright, understood. No one is allowed to keep the demonic cores for themselves, let alone use them, no matter when. Yin Yang exhorted in a heavy tone. The crowd nodded. Almost all of them agreed to Yin Yang's words without any hesitation. Luo Dajiang asked on behalf of Yin Yang, "Are the demonic cores harmful to improving one's cultivation base?" "That's right," Yin Yang said solemnly. "If one forcibly takes the demonic cores to improve one's cultivation base, I'm worried that one will be demonized, not to mention suffering from qi deviation." Hiss. The crowd sucked in a cold breath when they heard that, especially the disciples, who all had lingering fear on their faces. Fortunately, they did not act on impulse. If they had swallowed the demonic cores directly like Hu Xiaofan, they would have been in big trouble. Yun Xiuxin raised her hand excitedly and said, "Master, I'm now at the peak of the 3rd tier Venerable Realm." The little girl obviously felt that she had made a lot of progress, for she looked proud and felt very good about herself at the moment. "I'm at the 3rd tier, intermediate level of Venerable," Bai Yexing reported. "The 3rd tier, beginner level of Venerable," Sun Mingxiu added. "The 3rd tier, intermediate level of Venerable." Hu Xiaofan chuckled and glanced at Bai Yexing maliciously. Bai Yexing looked back at him calmly, his eyes deep. His meaning was self-evident. "Little guy, the same cultivation base doesn't mean the same combat strength. If you're not convinced, you can come and give it a try." The other disciples had also made a lot of progress between the peak of the 2nd tier and the beginner level of the 3rd tier. In this way, the strength of residents of 9 Supremes had taken another great leap after this trial in the mystic realm. When we go back, each of the top 10 disciples will go through a month or 2 of consolidation and training, and then go out into the martial world on their own to gain experience in life. There's no need to cultivate in seclusion in the sect anymore. Yin Yang smiled faintly and said, "I know you've always been looking forward to the days of wandering the martial world." When the disciples heard this, their faces were filled with excitement. They looked at each other with sparkling eyes, eager to give it a try. Their intentions were clear. Sher Wuchen and the others smiled bitterly at each other. There was no doubt that in the hearts of these young boys and girls, the words "wandering the martial world" were like a poem or a painting. Riding horses all over the world, roaming the martial world, punishing the evil and promoting the good, taking the 4 corners of the world as their home, and doing chivalry. Just the thought of it was enough to make one yearn for it. In the martial world, there were friends, hot blood, wine, beauties, legends, heroes, swordsmen, assassins. Wow! How colorful and magnificent it was. But when one really roamed the martial world, one would know that the so-called wandering the martial world was absolutely different from what one had imagined. What one had imagined before was just a dream. The martial world in stories and the real martial world were not the same thing at all. The people who wrote those stories in the martial world, those authors at least, had never roamed the martial world. When you really roamed the Jianghu, you would definitely want to kill those people who wrote Jianghu stories. What kind of nonsense are these idiots writing? They've never done this even in their dreams. It's fine if you're talking nonsense, But why do you have to mislead others? Why do you have to mislead me? Why? In the past, Sherwuchen and the others had tasted all the hardships of roaming the martial world. From the bottom of their hearts, they naturally did not want their disciples to follow in their footsteps. However, they understood that their disciples were still dreaming of roaming the martial world, just like they had in the beginning. Not only could they not stop them, they could not even warn them beforehand. This was because they had to experience this cruelty themselves. Only then could it be transformed into a lifetime of wealth. The instilling of external forces could never compare to the cruel truth of reality, which was more solid in the depths of their hearts. Along the way, everyone's spirits were still high. Even Sherwuchen, who had always looked cold, was smiling, which was rare. Not to mention the disciples of the younger generation, especially Hu Xiaofan, who had a jumpy personality. This child's luck was amazing. Not only did his cultivation base improve the most in the arcane realm, he had also reaped a bountiful harvest. The treasures of heaven and earth he had collected were even higher than Sherwuchen and the others, almost catching up to Yun Yang's. He was envied by many of the disciples. The moment they left the boundary of Mount Fivefold, Yun Yang subconsciously looked back and saw a thick fog suddenly falling from the sky, drowning the entire Mount Fivefold in an instant. In an instant, it was as if Mount Fivefold did not exist, leaving only a thick fog, so thick and deep that one could not see through it at all. Yun Yang's mind raced as he tried to go back the way he had come. However, after a dozen steps, he suddenly lost his sense of direction and felt the thick fog pressing down on him in an irresistible manner. Yun Yang hurriedly retreated, but it took him some time to find the right direction as he retreated. Mount Fivefold had suddenly become a forbidden land that was difficult to set foot in. It is indeed a wonderful place where the creation of heaven and earth gathers. Yun Yang exclaimed. It seemed that this Mount Fivefold would only open after 3 years. 3 years later, I want to be promoted to an upper-class sect here, and even replace the position of Sacred Heart Palace. Yun Yang said quietly in his heart. The group embarked on their return journey, but it was a long one. Along the way, sand and dust billowed in the air, covering the sky and covering the sun. However, in the hearts of Yun Yang and the group, everyone felt that the sun was shining brightly, and they were in an extremely good mood. It was just that when they passed by a patch of forest, Sherwuchen, who was leading the way, stopped abruptly and made a hand gesture. The entire group stopped immediately and did not move forward. In an instant, the entire place was silent. The group squinted and looked carefully in the direction of the forest. With a wave of Yin Yang's hand, Wu Minghuan and Kong Luoyue turned into 2 wisps of green smoke and floated into the forest without a word. Yun Yang stood with his arms behind his back, looking at the dark forest, his gaze calm and unruffled. After a while, Wu Minghuan and Kong Luoyue flew out, their expressions extremely solemn. What is it? There are many corpses in the forest, a total of 13 of them. Kong Luoyue's gaze was solemn, mixed with a hint of worry. They are from the Black Mountain League, ranked 5th among the middle-class celestial luck banner sections. Other than that, there are no other abnormalities. Yin Yang and the others frowned upon hearing this. No other abnormalities? It was already a huge anomaly that someone from the Black Mountain League had died here. This place was not far from Mount Fivefold, and the Black Mountain League was a middle-class celestial luck banner sect. Their combined strength was even greater than the residents of 9 Supremes, so how could they be weak? How could such an expert die here? Chapter 1158. If it can be sorted out tomorrow, I'll update it tomorrow. I am the Supreme. Please invite another one. Currently typing, please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1159. Yun Yang was deep in thought. The Black Mountain League sent a total of 23 people to compete for the banner at the Mount Pentecost. 13 of them died here? Yes, there are traces of an unusually intense battle at the scene. Yun Yang nodded and entered, obviously intending to see what had happened. The rest of them followed him in. In the dark forest, There was a large area with a circumference of several hundred feet. All the trees in this area had been smashed and cleared away. The trees in the surrounding area were also covered with speckles of marks, which should have been caused by the overflowing chi and sharp swords. On the ground there were 13 corpses scattered everywhere. Some of the corpses did not even look like humans anymore. They had died horribly. Broken blades, swords, and hidden weapons could be seen everywhere. The blood had already coagulated, and a swarm of flying insects were buzzing around it. With a wave of yin-yang's sleeve, a strong gust of wind blew, and the flying insects in the air fell down in droves. All of them died instantly, and were sent away by yin-yang with a breath. The place where they landed was dark. It's the Black Mountain League. We met these people a month ago, but their leader and top expert are not among them. But their sect leader and their number one expert are not among them. There are also several elders who are not there. Most of the people who died were seed disciples, but not all of them, only 7 people. The others who have not died should have escaped this disaster. Yin-yang frowned. But looking at the traces of fighting, the color of the corpses, the degree of decay, and the color of the blood on the ground, the smell, these people were killed at most 4 to 5 days ago. Sure, Wuchen and the rest nodded. They were all old foxes in the martial world, so they could still discern the truth. We stayed in the arcane realm for a month. The people from the Black Mountain League should have left the Mount Pentecost after we entered the arcane realm. Why did so many of them die here after more than 20 days? This doesn't make sense. There must be another reason. Yin-yang murmured to himself. Naturally, no one could answer this question. Even Yin-yang, who was wise, could not answer it. Look carefully. Many of the flowers and trees that have been cut in this area contain some aura. Although it's faint, it's real and different. There's also this strange smell in the air. If you look carefully, you won't be unable to sense it. Yin-yang's sharp gaze scanned the area. Also, the huge marks on the ground weren't formed by the impact of the impact. They're obviously the marks of hooves and claws. We've all fought with many demonic beasts in the mystic realm, so we shouldn't be unfamiliar with the traces of demonic beasts. Yin-yang looked at the crowd. Although the demonic beasts that have attacked us may not be the same ones we've dealt with before, there's no doubt that they've caused this. In other words, the reason why these people from the Black Mountain Union died was because the demonic beasts targeted them. Everyone nodded in agreement with Yin-yang's judgment. Just like what Yin-yang had said, everyone here had fought with various types of demonic beasts. As the saying went, one small clue could tell the general trend. They were definitely experts in the field of damage caused by demonic beasts. Although we can confirm that these are the actions of the demonic beasts, there's a new problem. Yin-yang said. First of all, according to the time, the Black Mountain Union should have returned to their sects to recuperate. Why would they come here and lose their lives? This is already very strange. I believe that there must be something fishy about this. Secondly, the Black Mountain Union suffered heavy casualties. The Black Mountain Alliance suffered heavy casualties this time. Even though they were not completely wiped out, they were not far from it. Under the hard work of the Sacred Heart Palace in the Bound of Universe, no demonic beasts have appeared in the areas under their jurisdiction for many years, let alone such powerful demonic beasts. How did they appear here? Shi Wuchen looked at each corpse and said, "There's one more thing. Although the battle was intense, it was very short. The battle started almost immediately after the encounter, and it ended not long after. Therefore, it's still too early to say if the Black Mountain Union was completely wiped out. I'm guessing that when the Black Mountain Union was attacked by the demonic beasts, some of them died on the spot, and some of them managed to escape. There's a high chance that the attacking demonic beasts would continue their pursuit." Luo Dajiang was puzzled. But if that's the case, those who escaped from the Black Mountain Union were still alive. If they were completely wiped out, the demonic beasts should have come back to destroy these traces. The demonic beasts don't tolerate humans, so they wouldn't have left such obvious traces behind, would they? If the Black Mountain Union were not completely wiped out, they should have come back to see what happened after such a long time. Or at least to collect the corpses, right? But the reality is that the people from both sides didn't come back. This is another suspicious point, isn't it? Yes, it's indeed suspicious. Ren Qingquang came back after a careful inspection and pointed in a direction. The Black Mountain Union should have broken out of the encirclement there and escaped. The demonic beasts on the demon clan's side should have also gone after them from this direction. Their combat strength should be no less than 20. With this combat strength, it's more than enough to continue attacking the Black Mountain Union. Lan Ruojuan said, I've checked carefully. There are indeed only human corpses here. There are no corpses or remains of any demonic beasts. Could the strength of the attacking demonic beasts be so strong? Tai Ching-song said, I've also noticed something. Apart from displaying their natural power in their beast form, the demonic beasts also showed traces of using weapons to attack. This means that at least a considerable number of the demonic beasts participated in this battle in human form. And the demonic beasts that could transform into human form must at least be at the level of a demon general. The crowd chimed in one after another, and in a short time, they had analyzed and reconstructed about 70 to 80% of the situation. It was almost as if they had seen it with their own eyes, but their cognitive judgment had won the admiration of the disciples. Except for a few, the rest of the disciples felt their minds go blank when they saw the corpses all over the ground. They could not figure out anything. It was only after listening to their master's conversation that they realized that so many things could extend from this mess. We've known each other for a long time. Let's work together and bury the corpses. Yin Yang sighed. Remember to set up a tombstone later so that the Black Mountain Union can find them. After all, they are high-level human cultivators. We can't let their corpses be exposed in the wilderness like this. Should we go after them and see what's going on? Asked Shi Wuchen. Yin Yang pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, As far as we can see, the combat strength of the demonic beasts is far above ours. Even if we go after them, we won't be able to do anything. Moreover, we have brought so many inexperienced disciples with us. If we act rashly, not only will it be futile, but we will also invite death upon ourselves. Wuchen, Qing-song and Ruojuan, the three of you go after them and see what's going on. But it's limited to scouting. Make sure your safety is the first priority. The rest of us will bring the disciples back to the mountain at full speed. Don't act rashly. All right. Shi Wuchen, Tai Ching-song, and Lan Ruojuan left at lightning speed. Just as everyone was burying the corpses, Yin Xiuxin suddenly cried out, Master, look over here. When she flipped over a corpse, she was shocked to see that the dead man's hand was under his body, and in his hand was a colorful bird feather tightly clenched. The feather was 3 feet long, and there was an inexplicable aura flowing faintly on it. It was filled with a sense of gloom and danger, striking fear into the hearts of those who saw it. Delighted, Yin Xiuxin tried to break the feather, but it did not break. With a casual wave of her hand, she easily cut a foot deep into the tree without injecting any mystical qi into it. Everyone could not help but look at each other in shock. A bird feather, that seemed to have fallen from a demonic beast, was actually comparable to a divine weapon. Yin Xiuxin played with it in her hands, looking like she could not bear to put it down. Yin Yang frowned, but did not say anything. There was a new grave in the forest, and the tombstone on it read, Grave of the 13 Disciples of the Black Mountain Union, the residents of 9 Supremes. The moment Yin Yang led his disciples through the forest and saw the road on the opposite side again, everyone had a feeling that life and death were indeed unpredictable. However, the unexpected change was like taking a stroll in the netherworld. Yin Yang was puzzled and even surprised by the feeling. Although the change was unexpected, it was not dangerous for the people of the residence of 9 Supremes. Why did he feel relieved? This was very unusual. Could there be some demonic beast spying on them in some way that could hide from his spiritual sense? As he thought of this, he was already holding a few pieces of ethereal amethysts in his hand. If the other party could annihilate the Black Mountain Union, they could definitely annihilate the residents of 9 Supremes. Yin Yang was very clear about this. It was at this moment that a long, sharp cry suddenly rang out in the air. The entire forest was instantly filled with a terrifying atmosphere of death. Waves of invisible demonic chi spread out, enveloping the surrounding hundreds of kilometers. Even the sky suddenly darkened. Oh no! Yin Yang did not even bother to lift his head. With a wave of his hand, pieces of ethereal amethysts flew out and formed a protective formation around the people of the residence of Nine Supremes. In the blink of an eye, the last piece of ethereal amethyst was planted into the ground. As Yin Yang exerted force under his feet, he sent the other 10 ethereal amethysts, which were the eye of the formation, into the ground beneath his feet. A thick fog rose, forming another barrier under the heavy demonic chi to protect the people of the residence of Nine Supremes. In the blink of an eye, a protective formation was formed perfectly. Almost at the same time that Yin Yang's formation took effect, a humongous bird appeared in the sky abruptly. When it spread its wings, they were 1,000 feet wide, blocking the sun completely. All that could be seen was darkness and haze. As the giant bird descended, sand and pebbles flew in all directions. A powerful force came crashing down from the sky with a sharp whistle, heading straight for where the people of the residence of Nine Supremes were. On the other side of the powerful force was a large, shining golden claw that came crashing down. Boom! The entire land, as well as the surrounding mountains, shook because of this sudden attack. Although Yin Yang and the others were in the protective formation, and were only affected by the aftershock, they still felt dizzy. Yun Xiaoxin and the other disciples lost their footing and fell to the ground one after another, their faces pale and their eyes filled with fear. It was only a single attack from a demonic beast, but how could it be so powerful? The attacking demonic beast must be at least at the level of a supreme saint. Yin Yang came to a conclusion in an instant. A supreme saint demonic beast, and a flying one at that, and not just a beginner. No wonder the Black Mountain Alliance was defeated so badly. At this moment, an unusually strange voice rang in the air. Who is down there? What an exquisite formation. The tone was like two pieces of iron colliding together, indescribably harsh and sonorous. Yin Yang said faintly, I wonder which demonic senior is in the air? We humans and the demon race have minded our own business for many years. Today the demon race has invaded our border and killed our people. What is it for? The demonic beast continued to circle in the sky, sweeping up a large amount of sand and stones, causing dust and sand to fill the sky within a radius of several hundred miles. Many ordinary people were swept up, dancing in the air, letting out miserable wails that went unnoticed by the ears. The sonorous voice rang out again with a hideous laugh. Which sect is the young man from down there? Mind our own business? Where did this come from? The war between the demon race and the human race has never stopped for so many years. When has there ever been peace? Human beings are despicable and shameless. They have invaded our border, abducted our demons, conspired against our descendants. Why can't I come in and kill them? Yin Yang said coldly, every wrong has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. With Senior's extraordinary martial strength, is it right for you to kill the innocent? Innocent. Is it right? The voice in the air grew more and more intense. Who in the entire bound of universe is really innocent? Is it right for you to kill the weak of the demon race at will? Yin Yang's mind raced and he gave up on debating. The flying demonic beast in the air had obviously reached a certain level of extreme thinking. There was no use in arguing, and it would be a waste of breath. Just as the voices of their arguments faded away, the whooshing sound rang out again. Innumerable heavy forces that could move mountains and fill up seas bombarded the defense formation continuously. Fortunately, the defense formation that Yin Yang had set up was complete, and Yin Yang continued to perfect and replenish it, maintaining the formation at its strongest state of defense. Even though the attacks of the demonic beasts were getting stronger and fiercer, the people inside the formation did not feel as strongly as the first time, and they gradually calmed down. A moment later, the storm-like attacks in the air stopped abruptly, and the sky returned to their sight. Obviously, the huge demonic beast was gone, but no one felt at ease because the strong sense of danger was still clear, as if it was within their reach. Yin Xiaoxin and others were not the ones in charge of the formation, so they could only sense what was happening outside. so their knowledge was relatively limited. On the other hand, Yin Yang, who was in charge of the formation, had already noticed that although the huge demonic beast was gone, there was another thin figure in golden robes, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, his sharp eyes staring thoughtfully at the defense formation that was shrouded in thick fog. Although the other party was only standing with his hands behind his back, watching with cold eyes, and not making any other movements, he gave off a feeling of being immovable and unshakable. This kind of perception was even more awe-inspiring than when he was facing the continuous attacks of the demonic beasts. And it was also more difficult to fathom. The slender eyes of the man in the sky suddenly shot out a golden gleam. Looking at the formation below, he snorted coldly and said, "I'm the Golden Condor King. Junior, do you dare to tell me your name?" Yin Yang smiled and said, "I'll let you know that I'm Hui Yunfeng, the Deacon of Sacred Heart Palace. If you know what's going on, leave now." As soon as Yin Yang said that, Yin Xiuxin and others were dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. What did I hear? Did I hear it wrong? But when they saw the same look in the others' eyes, they all knew that they did not hear it wrong. "So, Boss Master, his lordship is wrong?" Up above, the Golden Condor King said mockingly, "So, you're the Deacon of Sacred Heart Palace. You're indeed extraordinary to have such a profound knowledge of formations. Humph. If you're not the Deacon of Sacred Heart Palace, I'm afraid you won't be able to support such a formation. But, since you're the Deacon of Sacred Heart Palace, why don't you dare to come out and fight me head-on?" What? What did we just hear? Did he believe us? Shi Wuchen, Yin Xiuxin, and the others exchanged another round of puzzled glances. Yin Yang said faintly, "I've never been one to show off my bravery, and I won't fall for the so-called goading. Besides, there are many of my disciples here, so I won't fall for your trick. Are you being reckless?" After a moment of silence, the Golden Condor King said lightly, "Deacon Hua, your formation is indeed exquisite, and I can't break it. In that case, why don't we make a deal?" Yin Yang said calmly, "Go ahead, Golden Condor King. My son was cultivating in the Demon King's forest, but he was kidnapped by the so-called Black Mountain League. I came out of the mountain in a rage and found my way here. But my son has already been sold to someone else." My heart ached. I know that the power of the Sacred Heart Palace is unparalleled in the bound of universe. Being a deacon means that you have a lot of authority. If Deacon Hua is willing to lend a hand and help me find my son, I will leave immediately without another word. I will not linger, and I will also swear to owe you a favor. I'll be eternally grateful," the Golden Condor King said. "Consider it, Deacon Hua." What? The other party really believed what Boss, Master, and Lord of the Sacred Heart Palace had said, and was certain that he was the Deacon of Sacred Heart Palace. He even made a request for help. Wasn't this too outrageous and weird? The juniors were a little confused. Yin Yang's thoughts about the Golden Condor King's words were different from those of the residents of Nine Supremes. He could tell that the Golden Condor King's words were full of sincerity and sincerity. As the king of the demon race, he should never lower his head to a human for help. However, this was the territory of the human race in the bound of universe. No matter how powerful he was, it was far less convenient for him to search for missing children in the human world than it was for humans. The status of the Sacred Heart Palace's deacon was extraordinary. As long as he helped sincerely, it was not as simple as doing half the work for twice the result. His words were the law, and no one dared to disobey his orders. As for why the Golden Condor King believed that Yin Yang was the Sacred Heart Palace's deacon so easily, the reason was even simpler. With the Golden Condor King's eyesight, he could naturally tell that Yin Yang's cultivation base was mediocre. It was hard to win people's trust by calling himself the Sacred Heart Palace's deacon, but his formation was so amazing that it was enough to make him invincible. Moreover, the Golden Condor King was a discerning man. He could clearly tell that while Yin Yang's formation was amazing and his wealth was unimaginably rich, the item that maintained the amazing formation was a supreme grade energy crystal. Even if it was not the rarest supreme grade spiritual jade, it was still far above it. Yin Yang's wealth was not something an ordinary person could compare with. At least, He was much stronger than the Black Mountain League that he had almost overthrown previously. Combining the above points, he came to a conclusion. Yun Yang was a genius in formations and extremely wealthy, but his cultivation base was not very high. If such a person did not have a considerable background, he would have long been slaughtered like a fat sheep. Therefore, his identity as a Sacred Heart Palace's deacon was actually a logical one. Since he could not shake the Golden Condor King in a short period of time, he could only try to appease the Golden Condor King. The best way to appease the Golden Condor King was to show a considerable amount of kindness. Yin Yang pondered for a moment before saying, "Since the Golden Condor King has said so, it means that you've given me some face. I will definitely pay more attention to this matter in the future." However, looking for a person is still like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's not easy. I can't promise more. I can only do my best, the Golden Condor King said. I am already very grateful that the deacon is willing to lend a helping hand. I will leave a feather that I've painstakingly given to the deacon. As long as my child is within 100 miles, this feather will respond. Without waiting for Yin Yang to answer, a golden light flashed in the air, and a feather descended from the sky. Deacon Hoa, if you can find my beloved child, I will be eternally grateful. I will not go back on my word when I vow to do you a favor. A long howl sounded. Children, follow me to annihilate the Black Mountain League. A strong gust of wind rose in the air, as the Golden Condor King turned into a 1,000-foot-tall creature once again. Flapping his wings, countless huge shadows soared from all directions as well, covering the entire sky in an instant. Heaven and earth were dimmed, and one could not even see their own fingers if they stretched out their hands. After a while, the demonic clouds dissipated, but a large patch of dark clouds soared into the distance, whistling towards the south. Along the way, the Golden Condor King's eyes shone with a golden light as he murmured, Hua Yinfeng, Hua Yinfeng. Sacred Heart Palace actually has such a formation? The Golden Condor King and his army had left just like that. Yin Yang waited for a while to make sure that the sense of danger from before was gone, before he withdrew the formation and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. This was the first time he had encountered the demon race head-on, but the powerful strength that the other party had displayed had deeply shocked Yin Yang. Dozens of feet away, there was a feather that was 100 feet long stuck straight into the rock. It was emitting a bright light that was like a flame. However, this feather was like a huge flag that stood proudly invincible. It was only a feather, but the strong light it emitted was enough to illuminate an area of 10 miles. Yin Yang walked forward and could clearly feel the powerful power attached to the feather. Master, how could the Golden Condor King be so gullible? He believed you with just a few words. Yin Xiu thought. This demon race is a little too. The little girl could not finish her sentence. Yin Yang smiled bitterly and said, Believe me? You've underestimated the Golden Condor King. It's fine to say that he believes me, but it's also fine to say that he didn't believe a word I said at all. Looking at the feather, Yin Yang stood still 30 feet away. Then, he used his divine sense to check himself and asked Emmy to do the same. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he felt relieved and waved his hand, saying, Let's go now. Before his voice echoed in the air, he led the group and left. Not only were the disciples puzzled, but even Shirbujia, Wu Menghuan, and the others were surprised. That feather is the token that the Demon King gave you. Moreover, it looks like something good. Are you going to give it up just like that? What about the previous promise? Are you going to forget about it? Master Yu. Yun Xiu looked at the feather reluctantly. What a waste. This feather is at least many times better than the one in my hand, isn't it? Yun Yang's face was dark as he led his disciples forward at top speed. It was not until they were 40 to 50 miles away that he slowed down a little and said with a dark face, Do you really think that the Demon King is so easy to talk to? This is a trap, an obvious trap. Wu Menghuan was puzzled. If it's a trap, they could have done it long ago after we left the defensive formation. Yun Yang smiled and said, The trap is not here. He frowned and said, He said that he left the feather behind to ask for our help, but in reality, This feather is hidden in the golden condor king's divine sense. But in reality, this feather is hidden in the golden condor king's own consciousness. If we really take this feather, then no matter where we go, as long as the monster king wants to find us, he can find us at any time. This is one of the dangers. Yunxiu's mouth was agape. Furthermore, with the opponent's holy venerable cultivation base, if he used a divine sense transformation technique on this tail feather, wouldn't it be the same as bringing the demon monarch directly to our home if we really take this tail feather back? As long as the other party wills it, they will be able to arrive immediately. Although the protective formation I used is enough to resist the other party's attack, it needs time to set up the formation. If the other party suddenly appears and catches me off guard, we will be defeated in an instant. If he follows us directly to the residence of 9 Supremes, and this is only our own danger, Yun Yang said faintly. Although he can't hurt us because of our formation, there's no need for him to explain to us why he came here. Ren Qingquang asked in surprise. Isn't the Demon King showing his goodwill to us by explaining the reason? He even said that as long as we find the child, he'll make a vow. That's a vow witnessed by heaven. Once he breaks it, he'll be punished by heaven. Sigh. The so-called vow is the biggest smokescreen. In fact, his explanation includes why he came here, and that his child was captured by the Black Mountain Alliance. Yin Yang smiled faintly. I only believe half of this reason at most. Let me ask you, since he's the Golden Condor King's descendant, and has grown to the point where he can roam the martial world, what cultivation base should he have? Putting aside the level of cultivation base, who can enter the Demon King's forest to abduct the child? I don't think the Black Mountain Alliance has such an ability. Yin Yang smiled and said, the fact that they killed the men of the Black Mountain Alliance without searching the spatial items of the deceased is enough to prove this. In other words, the purpose of their ambush isn't to search. Since it's not to search, then the disappearance of the child is just a plausible reason that they came here on their own. This reason was spread by themselves. They don't need anyone to believe it. However, if we really help to search, we'll become colluding with them instead. If the Golden Condor King is the enemy of the human race, wouldn't we be traitors to the human race if we colluded with him? As for the vow, since it's not true that the descendant was abducted, how can we find the target in exchange for the other party's favor? The crux of the vow doesn't exist. No matter how much promise we make, it's only a moon in the water, a flower in the mirror, something that can be seen but not reached. Then, why do we have to take this? Are we trapped in our own trap? Now, the only thing we need to do is to return home as soon as possible and pretend that we know nothing. Sun Mingxiu said cautiously. But, sect leader master, if we just ignore it this time, I'm afraid that in the future. Yin Yang smiled faintly and said, with the Golden Condor King's decisiveness, how can he be ordinary? Since he can't break our defensive formation, he won't waste any more time on us. Especially when he doesn't know where we are from. Even if he's looking for someone by name, he'll only look for Hua Yunfeng of the Sacred Heart Palace. If he really meets Deacon Hua, he'll only fight, and there's no other way. Hearing Yin Yang's words, everyone was suddenly enlightened and could not help laughing out loud. It turned out that this was the real reason why Yin Yang had registered Hua Yunfeng's name. The Sacred Heart Palace and the demon race were on completely different sides, and there was no room for negotiation. If Hua Yunfeng really met the Golden Condor King, he could only fight him head-on. But master, why did he believe you so easily when you gave him a fake name? Yin Xiuxin was puzzled and asked. Since he's a demon king, he should at least have the ability to discriminate, shouldn't he? Yin Yang chuckled and said, it's because he's experienced and knowledgeable, that he knows it's impossible for ordinary sects to have such an exquisite formation. Since we can come up with such an exquisite defensive formation, and have enough wealth to maintain it for a long time, then it's more reasonable for me to register with the Sacred Heart Palace. Of course, he won't believe it completely, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't believe it at all. Since he can't attack it immediately, he naturally has to change his method. This is the so-called balancing act. Or I should say that he's targeting the Sacred Heart Palace. Or perhaps it's a game between the demon race and the Sacred Heart Palace. Yin Yang explained in detail. So, we shouldn't get involved in the current matter if we can. We really can't afford to get involved in it with our current weak bodies. It's not about justice or morality. Everyone came to a sudden understanding, and all of them thought to themselves, the other party looks like a stupid, dark, and crude demon king that speaks with utmost sincerity, yet he's actually hiding such sinister thoughts. Isn't it astounding? The group continued forward, picking up their pace. After another 100 miles or so, Shi Wuchen and the other two caught up with them. The Black Mountain Alliance was almost wiped out. Shi Wuchen's expression was solemn. We followed the trail for about a few hundred miles and found some bodies of the Black Mountain Alliance. It seems that only the sect leader and the sect's top expert escaped. Everyone else died a violent death. Tai Ching-song said. I chased in another direction and found the bodies of the Golden Cauldron sect's people by chance. It seems that not many of them escaped. Everyone's expression changed abruptly when they heard this. Lan Ruojuan wiped away his cold sweat and said, I also saw the Daluo sect's people fighting a flock of golden eagles in the other direction. The situation was not good, but they were still able to hold their ground. I didn't dare to attack directly. After a while, a large flock of golden eagles suddenly came from afar. So I left quietly. If I had intervened, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to return. Yin Yang sighed, his expression solemn as he said, It seems that this is a targeted action by the entire Golden Eagle tribe. I don't know why, but there must be a reason. They are targeting more than one sect. Yin Yang took a deep breath and said, We need to rush back to the residence of 9 Supremes immediately and spread the news as soon as possible, especially to the Sacred Heart Palace. Judging from the situation of the 3 sects with celestial luck banners being attacked, perhaps the few deacons of the Sacred Heart Palace are also targeted. The group grew even more silent as they hurried on at the highest speed. The sky was already dark by the time the group covered 3,000 miles in one go. Yin Yang did not choose to pitch a tent in the wild, but found a nearby village to stay in a farmer's house. That night, the sounds of explosions were heard all around them, and it seemed that there was a great battle going on in every direction. There was a period of time when the sounds of battle came from afar, and even reached above their heads, but they soon faded away. These were the sounds caused by the battle between top experts. Yin Yang had been sitting quietly, listening to the movements around him. He was meticulous and careful, keeping his guard up. If he had not brought these disciples with him at this moment, he would have gone out long ago with his personality. But now, he could not be impulsive, and he could not rashly cause trouble. Yin Yang was not afraid, and he was confident that he would not die. With his abilities and various manifestations, it would be difficult for even the demon race to kill him. But the little fellows he had brought with him could not do so. In the second half of the night, the noise that had been ringing for most of the night suddenly disappeared. There was a dead silence between heaven and earth, so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After a while, Yin Xiuxin and the others opened their eyes, still staring out of the window in bewilderment. Practice hard, all of you, Yin Yang said indifferently without opening his eyes. No matter how loud the noise outside is, what does it have to do with you? Being so curious will kill you. Remember, when you travel the martial world in the future, you must never have curiosity. Sleep, all of you. Early in the morning, the group continued on their way back. However, when they passed by a forest, Yin Yang's ears twitched, and he turned his head abruptly. He saw a man slowly walking out of the forest and looking at him with clear eyes. The people of the residence of 9 Supremes stopped and focused their eyes on the newcomer. The man was tall, and had a square face. He was none other than Hui Yinfeng, whom Yin Yang had borrowed a few days ago. But now, Hui Yinfeng's face was pale and sorrowful. He no longer had the bearing and demeanor he had before. Although he tried his best to maintain his previous bearing, he was unable to do so. Sect leader Yin, we meet again. Yin Yang strode forward and asked, Deacon Hua? Why are you here? Hui Yinfeng smiled faintly and said, I'm just a tiger who has fallen. I'll have to ask for your help next, sect leader Yin. Shi Wuchen's expression changed. Deacon Hua, you are badly injured, aren't you? Hua Yunfeng sneered and said, Yes, I am. Yin Yang's heart skipped a beat. Hua Yunfeng's posture showed that he was very defensive. Although he was asking for help, his attitude had not changed much. Sect leader Yin, I need you to escort me back to the Sacred Heart Palace. Hua Yunfeng looked at Yin Yang with a pair of gloomy eyes. It's an urgent matter. Yin Yang only pondered for a moment before he made a prompt decision. Wuchen, you and the disciples will return to the residence of 9 Supremes according to the plan. Then, you will cultivate in seclusion for at least a month, and then let them go out to gain experience. The disciples' first experience must not exceed 3 months. After that, you can do whatever you want. Do you understand? Luo Dajiang took a step forward and said, Boss, I'll go with you. No one. I'll help Deacon Hua alone. I only need to worry about myself and do whatever I want. If anything happens, I can act flexibly, Yun Yang said faintly. You are too big a target to follow. Even if 2 people can work together, it's not as good as 1 person working together, Yun Yang said faintly. Besides, the future of the residence of 9 Supremes is still on your shoulders. How can the burden be so light? Yin Yang stood up and said, Don't stay idle when you go back. The disciples will go out to gain experience, and you will also go out to explore the martial world. Understood. Luo Dajiang understood Yin Yang's meaning in an instant. It was impossible for the little fellows to go out without someone to watch them. Hurry up and go on your way, Yin Yang said. Go now. Then, without another word, he carried Hua Yunfeng on his back and sped in another direction, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Let's go. Sure Wuchen looked in the direction Yun Yang had left in a daze, and immediately gave the order. Urging the disciples who were still reluctant to leave, the group set off once more. Not bad. Sect leader Yin is indeed a man of character. You are decisive and bold. Hua Yunfeng was full of praise from Yin Yang's back. Sect leader Yin, I believe you can see that I'm at the end of my rope now. I'm also aware that danger is nearby. So, you made a prompt decision to separate from them immediately. You didn't even want to say a single word of explanation. Such decisiveness is indeed worthy of being a sect leader. Yun Yang said with a chuckle. Even Deacon Hua, a man with an extraordinary cultivation base, is seriously injured. How can a group of small fries like us from residents of 9 Supremes stop him? Of course we have to plan ahead. Survival is our top priority, but we all have the same thought. Hua Yunfeng coughed, and a gush of blood suddenly gushed out of his mouth. The blood was golden. It was still sticky when it came out of his mouth, but it solidified the moment it fell into Yun Yang's neck. Yun Yang had always been a clean man, so he was not worried about this change. With a quick thought, he reached out and took out a large piece of gold. It was hard and heavy, and it was definitely gold. This, Yin Yang was shocked. I was hit by the Golden Condor King's golden claw. Hua Yunfeng chuckled. The Golden Condor King is an unusual species of the demon clan. It can be said to be an outstanding flying demon. It can travel hundreds of thousands of miles in a day, and its speed is extremely fast. Its inherited cultivation method has the powerful effect of turning ordinary things into gold. Once its power lands on anything, it will be able to turn it into gold. If it lands on a person's body, even if the victim has an extraordinary physique, he will only be able to hold on for 3 days at most. At the end of the 3 days, the victim's bones and blood will all turn into gold. Yin Yang was shocked. Today is the first day. The first day. Hua Yunfeng smiled faintly and said indifferently, I still have a little more than a day and a half to live. Yin Yang was silent for a moment. The other 2 deacons, Hua Yunfeng smiled and said, seeing that things couldn't be done, I fled with my 2 brothers in 3 different directions to avoid the worst situation of being caught in one fell swoop. Since you fled in different directions, with Deacon Hua's ability, the Golden Condor King shouldn't have caught up with you, right? Yin Yang raised his eyebrows. Hua Yunfeng was silent for a moment before he said faintly, I'm fast and have a high cultivation base. Moreover, I'm smart and flexible, especially when it comes to dealing with unexpected situations. My 2 brothers are definitely not as good as me. A look of admiration appeared on Yun Yang's face. So after Deacon Hua split up, you took the initiative to find the Golden Condor King? Hua Yunfeng laughed and said, It's not that I'm not loyal. I just left some traces to make it easier for the Golden Condor King to chase me. He gazed into the distance with a complicated expression on his face and said, The two of them are really stupid. I'm sure they will try their best to avenge me in the future. Yin Yang, if I don't see them again, you must pass on my message to them. Please do. I hope that my brother can bring the Golden Condor King's inner core to my grave in the future. He must come and pay his respects to me while he's still alive. If his soul reaches the netherworld, I'll definitely die with everlasting regret. Hua Yinfeng said word by word. All right, I'll definitely bring it to them for you. Genius 1 second to remember this website's address. Mobile version. Chapter 1160. The wind whistled, and the clouds swept past Yun Yang. Deacon Hua, you've left this place for a long time. Why are you and the people from the other sects still here? Yun Yang had been puzzled by this question for a long time, but it was a question that could only be answered by the person involved. Now that Hua Yinfeng was beside him, he naturally had to get to the bottom of it. I shouldn't have mentioned this to you, but now. Hua Yinfeng sighed. Hua Yunfeng sighed and said, Apart from residents of 9 Supremes, the other few sects that still stay here are all subordinate sects that have a relationship with Sacred Heart Palace and do some things for the palace. Cough cough. After the flag battle of Mount Pentatir, they stayed here for some time to make arrangements for the next 3 years. And I'm the person in charge. We had just finished talking, and were about to go our separate ways when the Golden Condor King suddenly. Hua Yunfeng let out a long sigh. After this disaster, Sacred Heart Palace's 1,000-year plan in this regard was almost destroyed. He did not say anything about the plan, and Yun Yang did not ask again. There were many things that the less one knew, the better it was. Yun Yang knew this very well. He knew that this matter must be a big secret that Sacred Heart Palace had been planning for many years. It was already not a good thing for him to know part of it, and if he forced himself to know more, he would only be courting death. Deacon Hua, although your injuries are serious and your symptoms are even more bizarre, if there are highly targeted treasures of heaven and earth, elixirs, such as supreme-grade things like the air of life, Yun Yang said in a low voice, it's not entirely hopeless. Hua Yinfeng chuckled. The Golden Condor King's individual combat strength can only be regarded as average among the various tribes of the demon race, and his ranking is not very high. Even if he has the talent of flying and extraordinary speed, that's all. After all, when the demon race reaches a certain cultivation base, even a bear-like heavy demonic beast can fly thousands of miles in one go. Therefore, the talent of flying demonic beasts does not give him much of an advantage. But the Golden Condor King is an unusual species that almost no demon dares to provoke, except for a few very powerful demon kings, mainly because of his divine metal transformation skill. This divine art has a special attribute, and its effects are so vicious that it can be said to be unparalleled in the world. There is no cure for it. Be it the shadowless poison, formless poison, or decaying poison, any single one of them is a monstrous creature that strikes fear in one's heart. However, as long as one has an antidote, or a treasure such as the Heaven Spirit spring water with the chi of life, they can still be cleansed and dispelled. However, this divine metal transformation technique can only be dispelled by the chi of reincarnation. Other than reincarnation chi, there's no other way to deal with it. Even the legendary heavenly Dao Qi won't be able to slow down the spread of the mortal to gold transformation, let alone the Qi of life. If this technique was used on an ordinary person, it would take 3 days. When it hit a martial artist, it would also take 3 days. In order to deal with this sinister technique, the victim must have the cultivation of a saint monarch and be immune to all evils. Otherwise, there is no solution. Therefore, this technique is the most taboo and unsolvable technique for those below the Saint Monarch level. Hua Yinfeng smiled bitterly and said, I'm doomed this time. Unless there's the chi of reincarnation, or a cultivator above the Saint Monarch level, who will use all his mystical qi to dispel the ominous metal qi for me. I'm dead for sure. Yin Yang was moved and said, Seniors Ding and you, having a brother like Deacon Hua in this life is not a waste of your life. Yin Yang's words came from his own feelings. Hua Yunfeng clearly knew that he had a slim chance of survival, but he still acted without hesitation, just to save the lives of his two brothers. Such brotherly loyalty was very rare in the martial world. Hua Yunfeng chuckled and said indifferently, It should be said that I'm the one who has the most advantages in this life, because I have these two brothers. I've been poor and afraid since I was a child, so I've developed the habit of treating money as my life. I'm stingy, greedy, and love to take advantage of others. I can't bear to see others richer than me. All these years, I've even cheated and deceived my own brothers and resorted to all sorts of means. When we fight outside, we can risk our lives for each other. When my brothers are in trouble, I can also step forward bravely and do whatever I can to help them. But as long as I see some money in my brother's hands, I'll feel itchy and try to get it. Hua Yunfeng chuckled. Hua Yunfeng chuckled. My bad habit is deeply rooted in my heart. I tell myself almost every night that I can't go on like this, and I must change it. But as long as someone shows off his wealth in front of me tomorrow, my eyes will still turn green with greed, and I'll scheme and scheme to get it. It's the same in this battle of the celestial banners. I even got the biggest fortune in my life. Ha ha ha. He laughed hoarsely, but it was unknown whether he was feeling complacent or mocking himself. Yin Yang was speechless. After listening to the old man's thoughts, even though the atmosphere was heavy, he actually felt like laughing. This guy's habit is really strange. But when he thought about it more deeply, he felt a little sad. How poor was Hua Yunfeng when he was a child that he could develop such a strange habit? Ahem. I'm just afraid of being poor, so I can understand the thoughts of this kind of miser. Ahem. That's why I never write about misers and have a guilty conscience. Ding Byuk and Yu Bunning have been my brothers for a lifetime, and we're very close. But the times I've taken advantage of them are also countless. Hua Yunfeng laughed hoarsely. Even in this celestial luck banner competition, when they won my money, I was still thinking about how to renege on it. I've obviously won it back from others, but I still have the same thought. What a pity, what a pity. With my death, Pu Des Huang and the others still owe me a lot of debts. I'm afraid they won't be able to collect them. Hua Yunfeng said in a regretful tone. No, you have to bring another message to them for me. Yin Yang was speechless. Just tell them that Hua Yunfeng is dead. You can't owe a dead man money. If you still have a conscience, give his money to his family. Yin Yang sighed and did not know what to say for a moment. At this time, a frightening golden light suddenly flashed in the sky ahead. Yin Yang did not dare to be careless. With a whoosh, he descended quickly and flashed into the dense forest on the left. With a rustling sound, he was already 3,000 feet away. With a loud boom, smoke and dust rose. Looking into the distance, Yin Yang saw that the sky was already dark. There were 9 giant golden condors circling and flying in the air, blocking out the sun and the sky. These are the Golden Condor King and his 8 demon generals. Hua Yunfeng's voice was weak. I've killed 2 of his 10 demon generals. It's a pity that I didn't get their demon cores. That's a lot of money. What a pity, what a pity. Hua Yunfeng seemed to feel it was a pity. Even in such a state, he still looked at the sky with fascination and said, This is the Golden Condor King and the 8 demon generals. How much would the 9 demon cores of demon generals and above be worth? Yin Yang lowered his head and scurried away. His body was like a snake, and he tried his best to hide his body among the trees. With a swish, he was already hundreds of miles away. He resisted the urge to complain in his heart. Big brother, why are you still so greedy at a time like this? F***ck. I thought that Qian Duoduo's love for money had already reached the pinnacle and was unparalleled in this world. I didn't expect that this fellow in front of me would go even further. He's simply risking his life to fish for benefits. He would rather die than make money. In the sky, the Golden Condor King's sonorous voice rang out. Hua Yunfeng, I took the initiative to let you go and let you help me find my child, but you used it to kill 2 of my brothers. Even if heaven doesn't punish you, This king will never forgive you for ignoring my promise like this. This king swears to kill you. You treacherous, shameless bastard. Hua Yinfeng sighed on Yun Yang's back. Listen to this F** king old B** starred. What the F** ck is he talking about? When did I see him? When did I agree to help him find his child? Now that I see that F** king resentful son of a B** teach, it's like I've F** ket his wife. It's simply inexplicable. Yun Yang, who knew the truth, coughed and did not say anything. He couldn't say anything about this. Although Yun Yang was thick-skinned, he still needed some dignity. If he said anything more now, it would be too unconscionable. So he really couldn't get involved. The golden light in the sky flashed again. With a long cry, the golden condor king's huge body shot down like a sharp arrow. Yun Yang tried his best to circulate his mystical qi, and quickly slipped into a cave. Then he rushed out of the cave and fell straight down the cliff. In the face of a top-notch expert like the golden condor king, the so-called cave was not enough. The golden condor king would not even care about the chance to catch a turtle in a jar. The truth was just as Yun Yang had predicted. Almost at the same time Yun Yang and Hua Yinfeng fell down the cliff, the whole mountain exploded with a boom. The upper half of the mountain was completely shattered, and rubble flew into the sky. This was the vision of a truly powerful cultivator. The obstacles in the eyes of ordinary people could disappear with a wave of their hands. It was not the same as common sense. Amidst the rising dust, Yun Yang and Hua Yinfeng flashed past. I've already told you the address of the Sacred Heart Palace. Hua Yinfeng's voice sounded. If it really doesn't work, you can leave me behind and escape by yourself. What we must solve now is to report to the palace about the trouble caused by the demon race's crossing of the barrier this time. They must be plotting something big by mobilizing so many people at all costs. I've already sealed all the information in a jade slip. As long as the jade slip is delivered. Yun Yang remained silent, still flying in the shape of a snake. Suddenly, his body swayed, and he turned from rushing forward to retreating in the opposite direction, flying 3,000 feet backward. This was because the Golden Condor King's attack had fallen on him at this moment. If Yun Yang had followed his original trajectory, he would have been hit head-on. Just as the Golden Condor King's attack missed, and the dust billowed into the air, Yun Yang changed his direction again. He went from retreating to advancing with all his might like before, plunging into the thick cloud of dust that was so thick that he could not even see his own fingers. As soon as he entered the area covered by the dust, he quickly dove into the big hole where the Golden Condor King's attack had landed. The divine edge cut a hole with a swoosh and continued to extend, while Yin Yang dived down at an astonishing speed with Hua Yinfeng on his back. When it's time to run, run even if you have to give up everything. Do you understand? I'll definitely remember Senior's teachings, said Yun Yang in a profound tone. It's easy to remember, but it's difficult to follow it and carry it all the way to the end. It's inevitable that there will be times when it's hard for people to make a choice, and they can't let go. But there will also be times when their blood is boiling. Hua Yinfeng said these earnest words in a very humorous voice, but they made Yin Yang feel a pang of sadness in his heart. Hua Yinfeng understood everything, but he still did it at the most critical moment. It was precisely this kind of understanding and doing it that was the most precious thing that human beings had sung about for thousands of years. The sound of explosions kept ringing out above their heads from an unknown distance away. It was obvious that the Golden Condor King refused to give up and was working tirelessly to find Hua Yinfeng's traces. However, the two of them were now drifting in the underground river, and it was difficult for the Golden Condor King, who was above them, to see through their movements. No matter how high his cultivation base was, he could not do anything about it. At least for the time being, Yun Yang and Hua Yinfeng were safe. But Hua Yinfeng's expression was getting more and more unsightly. Genius 1 second remember site address, mobile version. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.